Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. The City Council Committee on Finance, May 6, 2020, Wednesday. We're going to call to order. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Chairman Iglesias.
Present.
Vice Chairwoman Ryan.
Present.
Councilwoman Castillo. Absent. Councilman Anthony.
Present.
Councilman Taylor.
Here.
We have 4 present, 1 absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Let the record reflect that President Pro Tem Correa is present. Councilman Espinola is present. City Solicitor Cheverini is present. Internal Auditor is present. The Treasurer is present. And I think that's we have at this time. Okay. Just for quickly, because of timing and as you know, I had a conversation with the Internal Auditor just a little while ago, committee members, and as you know, we just received earlier the personnel supplement, and she's working on it diligently, but there's a lot of outstanding questions. So she's requested, because of the volume that's occurring at such a quick pace, but also at a time that she's getting things at such a late date, that we're going to look to continue the Department of Public Works to the next Finance Committee meeting. So I didn't want to have them stay on. And we're going to then just finish up with the police, fire, and communications this evening. And this is to give deference to the internal auditor so she can continue to run her numbers and do the work that she needs to do. Committee members have any questions?
No, I think that makes tremendous sense.
All
Mr.
right,
Chairman,
so-
may I just, I have a question, and it's not a
Councilman
question.
Anthony?
I am
Yep.
so sorry. I have to leave for a 6 o'clock meeting that have to be involved with. So I just wanted to let you know, if I drop off at 6 o'clock, it's not because I've gone missing.
Okay, thank you, Councilwoman. All right, so then with that, I want to just let's make a motion to continue the Department of Public Works discussion the next finance meeting.
So moved.
And
Second.
by Vice Chair, second by Councilman Taylor, discussion. This will allow all those individuals from the Department of Public Works, they can then hop off this evening. If they want to stay for the meeting, they're more than welcome. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. All right. So then, let us now continue from last night. We talked about, as you know, Madam Clerk, we have items 2, 3, and 4 and 5. Correct, Madam Clerk? So I'd like to make a motion to take up items 2, 3, 4, and 5 at this time for discussion. A motion
So
by
moved.
Vice Chair, second by Councilman
Second.
Taylor. Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Let the record reflect that President Matos is present. So I believe, and Gina, we did have a couple of housekeeping questions on the police side, and we want to get to that, I think, first. And I know the Commissioner's on the line. I think Mr. Mancini's on the line, Ms. Richards is on the line, and Ms. Silveria is on the line. So why don't we swear those folks in at this time, Mr. or Mrs. Clerk, which one? Who's going to do it?
Can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear under penalty of perjury the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Do you have the, I'd like to enter into the record, I need the exhibit 5 from yesterday. I'd like to enter into the record, did everybody have a copy of the personnel supplemental documents, committee members? All right.
Yes.
So let's enter in the record and identify as Exhibit 6. Exhibit 6 to our budget discussions. So
Mr.
make a
Chairman,
motion to do that?
hold, please. Where,
Excuse me, Exhibit C. Exhibit C, I'm sorry, the letter C, my apologies. The personnel,
I don't have
the
it.
personnel.
That should have
Make
been
that
delivered
motion.
to your house.
It's just to get it into the record this time. I don't even know if we'll have a chance to refer to it, but, well, if we could make that motion to enter into it.
So moved.
Make it identify Exhibit C, the personnel supplemental budget by Vice Chair, second by Councilman Taylor. Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Carries unanimously. Thank you. Did you find that for me? Could have been, was it the police side, that one?
Fire.
That one, I'm sorry. Okay, thanks. I know that's the old 6, right? Yeah, 6. Thanks. Okay. All right, folks. So, there's a couple of housekeeping measures we wanted to talk about. First of all, I just want to check on something. Commissioner, and I don't want to get too detailed, I was just wondering, I know there was a statement by the administration that the closing of the sheet program that you guys implemented, that there would be civilians enforcing that. Can you just delve into that? Did you deputize civilians to enforce that law? And if so, who? And how the civilians have the authority to do that? I read that as part of the publicity of it.
No.
So can you tell us then, why did they present it as a public statement that civilians would be enforcing that street closure process?
I don't know how many volunteers we have that will be assisting us in the street closure out there as informational providers to those folks that are there. They're not doing any enforcement or any enforcement whatsoever, but they will be providing information to those folks that have questions or need information about the use of those closed streets.
Can you then have the administration retract one of their press releases that said that they would be enforcing it, and then just to clarify that? So this, if you could get that squared, be very, I think it's important. Next, I think we had some, we'll go to the back very quickly to the police. Gina, there was a couple of questions I had about police. I mean, at the time, we didn't get to it. It was getting late in the evening, but I want to ask you, presently right now, Commissioner Elaine, I think this will go to you, and if you can unmute yourself. Presently right now, and there are approximately 30 police positions in this present budget that are allowed and funded and not filled. Can you explain to me, there's 30 positions. Can you tell me what is that? Is that attrition? What happened there? That's a lot of positions that are funded and not filled in this present fiscal year. Forget about the future year right now. Let's talk about the present one.
In the
Can you tell me how we have, in the present fiscal budget, you guys were allowed and funded 365 positions, right? You have actual 300, excuse me, I'm sorry. You were allowed and funded 453 positions, and you actually have 422 filled. So that's approximately 30 some odd positions that are allowed and funded sitting in the present budget.
Okay.
Can you explain how you have such a huge gap there?
Well, we have a lot of retirements, sir.
Okay, so how many retirements did we have this year?
In the present year, we've had 12 or 13, and then we had, I can tell you how many we had after the budget was submitted last year. One moment. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, since the budget was submitted last year also. And there are also 2 additional new offices that were let go from the last academy.
So with it looks like there's 31 open and funded positions present budget. And now the police department is looking for a total of 66 new positions in the upcoming budget.
That's not correct, sir. We're asking for 50 plus 3 new sergeant positions.
Oh, so okay, so you're asking for 50 plus the 31 that are empty, right? So then it's 50, 66, so it's 71 positions you're looking for then?
No,
It's even more than that.
we're only asking for 50 new recruit positions in the upcoming budget and 3 additional sergeant positions.
So then when I look at this and says, we got 453 funded positions today in the present budget, and in which you have 31 funded and allowed positions, and in the upcoming budget, you're asking for 488. So then when I add that comes out to 66. So you're telling me it's even greater than 66?
We're only asking for, I believe, a net of 18
Wow.
positions.
Well, you have 31 open positions as we speak, funded and not filled right now, and then you're looking to kick up your budget by another 35. So that comes up to the 66.
It's a net of 27 police person positions.
Okay, so then it's not so the present funded position isn't 453 per the budget, and the requested funded new position in 488, then what's performing, the budget book is incorrect, is that right? Is that
Yes,
what I'm saying?
the total, I think Ms. Silveri can speak to that unless it got
So
corrected.
So Mr. Ray, you need to unmute yourself. How many funded and allowable positions are there in the present police budget?
For sworn, there's 453.
453, correct?
Correct.
How many out of 453 are filled?
I would have to defer to the department on that. I don't know how many filled positions they have.
All right.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I could say it's not 453, that doesn't total up correctly, and I have let the finance department know that.
Okay, so okay, so right off the bat then, folks, we have to figure out what our present number of our present budget is, because if the finance department thinks you have 453 funded positions, and Ms. Richards, you think you have less or more of those positions?
Well, I'm sorry, 453 for the current year. I'm sorry,
Okay.
I was talking about
Okay.
2021.
So I'm gonna check that off, so that, at least that number's correct, right?
Yes,
So now, the upcoming proposed budget,
right.
what is the total amount of funded requested positions?
It'll be-
I have, what number do you have, Ms. Severio?
I have 488.
So 488, what do you have, Ms. Richards?
Same.
Okay, so presently right now, we have 422 people in those positions out of the 453. 453 minus 422, I think, comes out to 31. That means presently we have 31 unfilled funded positions in your present budget. In the upcoming budget, you're looking for another 35 new positions in funded, which equates to about 66 fully funded new positions. Does everybody see that? Or you think it's more than that, Ms. Richards, is that right?
No, I do not.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
you're correct, 30 additional positions.
Okay, so there's 66. Now, the question I have is, there's no way, if you're counting 50, we're not gonna have those offices on for a full year. So then therefore, we shouldn't give funding for a full year of those offices in this. You're looking for full funding of 66 new positions.
I am not
Right.
asking for that, sir. I'm only asking to fill
All right.
20 weeks of a training academy.
Okay. So then with that, then you're looking to, so out of the 66 new funded full positions, so you're saying you're just looking for a training academy, so you guys folks plan on hiring 66 just other positions of some sort? So what are those 66 new funded positions for then? You're looking, it's a big number there. It's a big number, right?
So in the requested budget, the finance office has put in 50 recruit positions with under the police person line item at 50 people for 20 weeks to fund the academy at a cost of $20 an hour at 40 hours a week, and it comes to $800,000 for the 20-week cost.
Okay. So Gina, I need you to eventually to decipher this quandary, this mystery.
Can I comment, sir?
Do you want to of course, Internal Order.
Okay, there is no identification of trainees in the compensation or, I'm sorry, the classification or the personnel supplement. So it does not identify how many police trainees are on. It only has 18.
Sarah, can you speak to that? The last academy wasn't done that way either. Actually, the last two.
Right, the last two academies were set out that way, so I'm happy to make that adjustment for the final personnel supplement and break out the trainees out of the police persons and put them in trainees.
So let me explain why I have a quandary, because when I look at the total amount for salary, for 453 people in the present budget, it's about $29,819,358. But then when you jump to 488 in your budget, it goes to 29,993,538. It goes up about 100,000. And I can't understand how you can how it doesn't go up higher by adding 35, even half funded positions. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. So I don't know where you're getting, I don't know how you're holding the line on your salary line, but yet increasing by 66.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that the reason that it was done 2 years ago was because of the COPS grant, and they had put the two together to make it clear, to make it appear for the COPS funded grant. But we no longer have that, so I believe that we could separate it now.
So I guess you're gonna separate, but I guess it looks like you may have to adjust your total salary, because it doesn't make sense that it would only go up $100,000 for 66 new people. You know, total, it doesn't, so Gina, this is something I think you gotta delve deeper into with these folks, because something doesn't make sense. So either something's kind of like you got it somewhere else, or I don't know, or you got some type of grant, or something's happening. So, and then how many folks do you plan on? You expect about how many retirees? About 10 or 15 the upcoming? You think for police?
Yes, and plus we have mandatory. Mm-hmm.
And also, how many are mandatory right now that you know of?
We have 3 in 2020 and 3 in 2021.
Okay. Are there any mandatory retirements for fire too?
There are.
And how many of those?
Yeah. There are 8 in 2020 and 11 in 2021.
Wow, huh? That's a lot. Okay. And Ms. Richards, you mentioned what the police are being, the police recruits are being paid. You said it's for 20 weeks, and it's, what does it come up to in total, you said?
We requested it to be $20 an hour because we used to pay them minimum wage, and it deferred us from getting a diverse applicant pool. So it's $20 an hour times at 40 hours a week. In the 2021 budget, it represents 20 weeks and $800,000 total.
Okay.
The additional 4 weeks will occur in 2022 budget.
All right. Has there been any hires in the past 2 months in the police department? Did any hiring of any personnel whatsoever?
There has been a hire of an IT person.
And I guess, Commissioner, maybe you can answer this. Is there a pool of present police recruits that already went through the training that we can go into, whether it's Providence or...
I missed your question, Mr. Chair.
Is there any already approved pool of applicants that we could actually hire as police officers, whether it's from the state police or one of those kind of,
Lateral transfers. No, we don't do lateral transfers here in Providence. So we recruit for our training academy, which we may continue to take applications. We may not have shut it out. And we're prepared for that next phase, which is a physical agility. We had to put that on hold because of the virus.
Okay. And what about lateral transfers? Why don't we do that?
Because we're an urban police department and we train differently than the state police. And the only perhaps comparable department are the larger cities in Cranston and Warwick and maybe Pawtucket. But we have historically not do any lateral transfers into this police department.
I mean, so that's just simply just a decision, a policy. We could do it if we want to, though.
We could do it, yes.
If we did do that, would it be like we'd put out a request for, like, we're looking for 5 laterals or something like that, and then see what the pool could be?
Yeah, I mean, the local police do that all the time, looking for police officers in the state of Rhode Island that have gone through either two academies, the State Police Academy and Municipal Police Academy, and recruit that way. We have never done that. If we were to consider that, we'd have to build a mini academy, if you will, a smaller, whether it's 4 or 5 week academy to train them. And all due respect to my colleagues across the state, policing in Hopkinton, Westley, or Burrillville is much different than policing in Providence.
So we could actually expedite at least acquiring some more help in the police force if we did like a mini academy, and then, of course, you base it on different jurisdictions. Right?
Yeah, theoretically you could. There'll be challenges to doing that. So what you typically get is somebody that's served 20 years in another municipality and they're seeking to do another career in another police department. So it comes with challenges.
I agree. All right.
Question?
Yep, who was asking? Oh, Councilman Taylor. Yeah, you need to press that little hand if you can.
Oh.
Councilman Taylor?
How many people did we lose opposite that went to other departments? like the lateral transfers to East Providence or Johnston
Yeah.
or?
Yeah, we lose some that click 20 and then they go. I recall in the past 4 or 5 years, I would say we've lost 10 Providence police officers that leave once they're eligible for retirement. We hardly lose anyone leaving to go to another department that hasn't completed their career here.
And also with fire department too? I'm sorry. Also fire department too?
Fire is a little bit different. There's no real certification like we have in police. So a fire can hire anyone. Of course, they want to be trained up, but there's no state requirement for any certification on the fire side.
No, but I meant, have we lost firemen for lateral transfers to other departments? Once they hit their 20 years, do they go to other fire departments, or just police have done that?
I'm not sure how often. I know fire has. We've lost some that just went to retire and went to another fire department at varying ranks, but my recall is it doesn't happen that frequently.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And maybe, I don't know who can, one of you folks can answer this question. The non-sworn, I guess the civilian salaries actually decrease in your police budget, but yet there is a 1% increase in January. So I guess the question is, that's the first question. Second question, how did that work out? How did you get to that? How did you do that accounting measure? And the next one is, are furlough days already calculated in the salaries? And if so, how many furlough days?
I'm going to have to defer to finance.
Thank you. Mr. Mancini?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, good evening, members of the committee. Lawrence Mancini, Chief Financial Officer. I have previously taken my oath. Mr. Chairman, as I have provided previous testimony this week and from the beginning of these proceedings, the Finance Department has made a placeholder provision across the strata of Local 1033 workforce that would include provisions that would permit, if successful, if otherwise we cannot identify savings throughout these proceedings, in cooperation with our work with the council and what we might learn from the General Assembly later as to how our final budget would turn out. But we have taken a provision that would delay, as I had said earlier, while there is not an agreement in place, the provision that's pending at the moment is a 6-month delay of the cost of living, which would be a 1% savings, and up to a maximum of 5 furlough days, which would be a yield of about 1.9%. That has been applied across the strata of all bargaining unit positions in Local 1033 as a time being placeholder to adjust our budget. And I also believe that there was a net change in positions in the civilian workforce. There were 3 positions that were unfilled. I believe they were Mounted Command Secretary, the Coordinator of Public Safety, and 1 Police Ranger. And by request of the department, there was a need for an additional animal control officer, given the work that they do and the increased requests for services provided by animal control, including those calls that come in mid-shift and late shift, and to have redundancy within that workforce. So based upon those changes in the civilian workforce, that's what led to, in effect, a net reduction in that budget.
So are you saying that they're removing an animal control
Adding.
office? Adding.
We are requesting there are 6 allowed, currently 5 funded. We're asking to fund 5.
Well, no, there's 6, in the present budget, there's 6 allowed, only 4 funded. In the upcoming
correct.
budget, you're looking for 6 allowed and to fund another one.
That is correct.
So we'll get to that in a second.
Sure.
The
And
other
then in
question,
addition to that, Mr. Chairman, there are 3 positions that we are not requesting funding, therefore defunding. They were Mounted Command Secretary, Coordinator of Public Safety, and one ranger. Those three have not been requested for funding in the 21 budget.
But they're in the 20.
I believe
They're in
those three
the 20 budget, right? They're in the 20 budget?
They are in the 20 budget. I believe those three positions is a total savings of just under 150,000.
Okay.
The animal control is about 60,000, or a $90,000 difference in salaries by the reduction of that.
There's a Mounted Command Secretary, a Park Ranger as well, was it?
The Secretary of the Mounted Command, Coordinator of Public Safety, Public Safety, and a Park Ranger.
Mr. Messini, you talked about furlough days. Can you tell me how the city is interpreting their definition of furlough days? What does that mean if it does happen to that employee?
So as I gave an earlier testimony, my interpretation of that is a day without pay and a day without reporting to work.
And does that mean, do they get reimbursed at a later date for that day? Will it be credited like 5 furlough days, but they'll also get like 5 additional personal days, or 5 more vacation days, or 5 more sick days, or be able to take 5 days in the future?
No. Typically, the furlough day is meant to be a loss of pay, theoretically, but it would have to be styled in the fashion that's acceptable to both the administration, the city, and of course the bargaining unit. I will say though that the compensation will not be reduced from the calculable pension calculation. So for those who understand that language, that means that the employee will continue to be regarded as having earned the salary that was expected to be earned had no furlough taken place, so that there would be no loss of pension calculable earnings, but would continue to make the contribution required on that salary.
So the city and the employee would still have to make the full contribution if the 5 furlough days didn't exist?
That is correct.
Right? So the city has to do it too, but the employee also. So if they were $200 were coming out, they're paying the $200, city pays $200, okay. All right.
That is correct.
All right, great.
And Mr. Chairman, I want to be clear again that while there is no agreement, I want to be clear that in the best interest of the labor workforce, and we mean that with the sincerest form of accommodation, we are endeavoring, even now, to find other savings in the budget and working collaboratively here in these proceedings, that if we're able to do that, and all things when known, including what the General Assembly will do, what the governor's final budget will look like, what revenue to the city will look like, all those things are completed over this weeks-long process that we're engaged in here, there may be opportunity to spare that because there may be other savings. So I don't want to make this, in any of these proceedings, indicate that this is anything to take full guarantee that it will be initiated. We put it in as a placeholder, as a means to be certain that we could balance our budget. And if it does not work out, that there's an alternative plan, then that would be the provision already included. So I want to be clear about that, because I don't want to have that disturb our relationships with Labor's Local 1033. They are aware of that. We've had these discussions, and these discussions continue.
And Mr. Mancini, 2 things. One, so what's the total value of that potential 1% put off, and is it 5 furlough days you put in this budget?
Yes, up to and no more 5. Yep.
So what? Oh, up
so
to. So it could be, but in the budget you calculated 5 furlough days. I'm saying in the budget itself. So the budget reflects 5 furlough days. So what's that total number of putting off the 1% and the 5 furlough days in this budget?
So the 1%, I believe, is 950,000. Let me see if I got it right. Sarah, do you have that handy? I believe it's.
Sarah, you need to unmute yourself. I
believe the furlough days is equal to 950,000, and the 1% is a savings of 520,000. Combined, it's about a new.
I don't have the number in front of me, but I can get back to you with that.
Yeah.
So the 1% and the 5 days mean something, right?
They do.
Okay.
Combined, they equal about 1.5 million together. About 1.5.
About 1.5?
Correct.
Okay. And then, all right. the next question, if you don't get that, the union doesn't agree, what's your plan for the budget?
So we will look at some other cost reductions between now and the adopted budget, Mr. Chairman, and we would take them in total as we go through this process. I'm sure inevitably in any budget year, working collaboratively with the council, we're going to find some way that there may be savings ahead, even in these discussions nightly. So collectively, we will determine what's the best path forward. And if we make a determination collaboratively that there are other alternatives to spare the workforce any diminishment, which is what I would prefer to see, I think we all would, then I think that would be something that would be weighed upon how these several weeks proceed in terms of what have we learned, what have we identified, what might happen from General Assembly, what we will learn regarding final state revenues to the city. So the budget before you was intended to be best efforts based on knowledge known to us today and based on positions established before today. And we've endeavored to do what we felt was appropriate. And again, I want to be clear that while there is not an agreement in principle or a signed agreement, there are continuing discussions that have allowed for us to have this discussion. And we mean not to dishonor the workforce by saying what we're saying, but I have to be clear to the committee that it is already included and reflected across the strata in all bargaining unit positions.
But it's only, the negotiation is only dealing with one bargaining unit. The fire department, the fire union, you're not planning on getting no give-backs whatsoever, and the police department also at this time. And are you planning any non-union give-backs? So
the non-union give-backs.
Will the non-union get 5 furlough days too?
Yes, it will. The non-union will follow 1033.
So 1033 agrees. Non-union and 1033 will be the only one that does any give-backs in this proposed budget. Fire will still get the 2.75% pay increase, and police will get their pay increase accordingly. Okay.
That is correct.
So therefore, there's not an across-the-board conversation with all our employees about any type of financial givebacks to protect, to save the city at this time.
Not across all work groups. What I said was that the 5-day furlough and/or the reduction or the delay in the cost of living is reflected in this budget across the strata of the workforce associated with 1033.
No, and I recognize that. I'm just differentiating the fact that there are 2 other bigger groups, not to mention the school department. We can put that aside because we're just going to be giving them more money. But there's no one else is being asked to feel any type of change or any type of frugal measure. Commissioner and Elaine Richards, you mentioned earlier, actually last night, you mentioned that the administration put you folks to task to put together a budget when doing the budget discussion about trying to submit your budget with a 30% decrease. What I'd like you to do is, can you forward that to internal auditor? We'd like to see what you guys proposed at the time. And Mr. Mancini, we would like to see what all the other departments were proposing as their 30% cut that the administration sent as a challenge to all the departments and to see what they were willing to cut at one time, and then what you folks submitted in the budget, which is clearly no one got to that number whatsoever, right? So, Commissioner, Ms. Richards, I'm going to need that work product that you produced and forward to the internal audit. Mr. Mancini, we need it for the other departments. We understand where because that's going to be the far more honest conversation on where we have potential ways to cut and hopefully address the city's financial situation here. Okay, so if you can get that by tomorrow, by Friday the latest, Mr. Mancini and Commissioner and Ms. Richards, okay?
Yep.
Acknowledged, thank you. I'm going to go to attrition. What's the total attrition you're looking at, Ms. Richards, Mr. Commissioner?
I have that, Mr. Chairman. So the attrition in the FY21 budget is assigned as $200,000 to the civilian workforce and $400,000 to the sworn workforce for a total of 600,000. And in the current budget for FY20, it's 180 for civilian and 380 for sworn. So it's an increase of about $40,000 in total for the year.
Did we meet in the current budget that attrition? Did we meet it in the current budget, the 180 and the 360?
I'd have to look at my police projections. So currently for police, in regular salaries and the various salary lines, we are expecting that we believe there would be about a 127,000 over budget in all of the salary lines associated with salary, sick, vacation, and holiday for the year. And they were expecting to be we expected to see a savings at this time. We're projecting a savings of 127,000 in that line item for FY20. We do think there'll be $125,000 overage in callback and overtime, and then a $136,000 overage in sick severance, holiday pay, witness fee, and differential and alternate work week. And then lastly, we think there'll be some savings in longevity. The net position of the department, based on projections through the printing of this report for this evening's, for last evening's discussion, we believe will be close to budget or about $15,000 below budget based on that information.
So are you saying that you, in this present budget, you believe you will meet that attrition rate?
I believe it's yes, I believe it's already absorbed in that.
Okay. And then, can you tell me, how did you calculate how did you calculate it? What did you use? What did you do it for each, you did it for each department, right? Was this just for the police department, 2021? So what did you do? You have for the, I know we're gonna get to the fire, so what did you end up doing for fire? What was this?
Fire does not carry attrition as a rule. We haven't used attrition in fire, Mr. Chairman, to my knowledge, for many years, at least 6 or 8 years of budgeting. Because of the change in the workforce and the number of other rules at work, we have really used attrition as a budget reduction in fire.
Okay. And what about the other, what about the, I guess communications and
yeah, so depending upon the size of the department, if it's a small department and it's a department that consists of long-serving members, it's rare that we would calculate an attrition number that's intended to be a savings that someone's not coming to work or not receiving regular compensation. But it can happen. It could be that they had some sort of an unusual leave, family leave, or that was not compensated, or workers' comp, and it's shifted to a different payroll. But as a rule, it's meant to be a budget practice because over time, without having definitive information before July 1, over time, odds are that on a 1,200 member civilian workforce and a nearly 1,000 sworn workforce, that there will be some savings associated with those who are not receiving regular wage compensation.
Were you able to, did you assign a percentage for each department? Did you break it down that way?
Yeah, in the large departments, it can be done that way, but some departments, it's specific identification. We know with a department that there may be an employee who may be nearing retirement. If we know that, and we don't think the department can fill the job before the year is out, that's an educated guess, but many times it is percentage based on a rule of thumb used by the budget office.
Okay. And, all right. And then I guess this was Ms. Richards. I think we mentioned it last night. Can you just break down the budget for the upcoming academy by account code and get it to the internal auditor?
Can.
All right. So I know it's kind of spread out in the budget, correct?
That is correct.
In different codes, right? Okay.
No problem.
So we need that, okay? In the fees not classified, in the 52120.
Yes, sir.
You got first can you tell me what are those fees in general, and then I guess you're looking for another $200,000.
Yes,
Can
sir.
you just explain to me what that means? What's that line item for? And then why are you looking
200,
for more money?
as I stated last evening, that 200,000 is for, lease for a training academy,
I'm sorry, it's for what? Elisa what?
for a training academy.
Oh, okay, so that's part of where, some of the money, that's part of where some of the academy costs are buried. Okay,
That
all
is
right, it's fine.
correct.
Okay, all right. So when you get me the account code for the academy, then we'll be fine. We'll be able to figure all that out.
That's correct.
All right, great. Just get it to the internal audit. Thank you. All right, all right. Committee members, do you have any questions any more for the police right now? We can talk some more about it as we move along.
Not at this time, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Gina, do you have any questions? Gina, internal order? All right, so let's get this other, I think did we enter these exhibits already, so we have to substitute? Did we do 6? All right, so we got 6. I mean, that's right? Oh, so let's go to 5, I guess next up is communications, Mr. Mancini?
We're good.
So you want to go to, exhibit B5, which is identified as the communications, which is 101-304. We can talk about that.
Just a bit of housekeeping here, Mr. Chairman, and I'll be with you in a second.
Okay.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, Communications Division of Public Safety is division known as 101-304. This is a revenue producing department. For FY21, revenue is budgeted at $794,532. This represents an increase of $75,532 over the prior FY20 budget. Revenues in this department are generated from the master alarm box fees. As to expenditures, beginning with salaries, total salaries for FY21 is $4,111,148, a decrease of $60,794 over the FY20 budget of $4,171,942. This decrease is due to the increased attrition that the city plans to delay in posting vacancies and will not be filling non-essential positions in FY21. As to benefits, employee benefits for FY21, $3,300,000. Yes.
On the non-essential, I know we requested it before. Can you please forward what the city considers essential and non-essential employees, what titles and et cetera? And could you please forward to internal auditor? Because I know we've asked that before. I know the state has done that exercise. I know other cities and towns have done that exercise, and they actually identified what position is essential, non-essential. Can you forward that list? And I believe you guys did the exercise.
I'll be sure to refer that to the Director of Human Resources.
Thank you. And if you can tell the Director of Human Resources, get it to the internal auditor, and it'll be very helpful before Finance Committee meets next week. Okay?
Yep.
All right. I'm sorry. I know I cut you off, but that was an outstanding request. We want to get it. We would like to get that info, please. I'm sorry. Continue, sir.
That's okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Vice Chair Ryan. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Vice Chair Ryan.
Do you think it would be helpful if we could ask that the departments coming before us add the essential and non-essential notation on our org charts, on the org charts that are presented? Would that be helpful?
Mr. Mancini, can you instruct your department to do that, please?
We can.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mancini.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mancini, you can continue, sir.
So, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee and members of the council, continue with the narrative under benefits. The employee benefits for FY21 are scheduled to be $3,354,720, a decrease of $48,345 over the prior year FY20 budget. As to services for FY21 are scheduled to be $1,101,660. Once again, a decrease of $384,000 over the FY20 budget. And this budget would include software upgrades and replacements that have been completed and result in a cost savings. On the supplies budget for FY21, it's been budgeted at $141,700, and that's an increase of $22,000 from the prior year. And there are no expenses for capital items in this general fund budget. If there are no questions on the narrative, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'd like to go into the three-box report.
You do?
On the three-box report, which is labeled as page 37 of the budget book deck, if I could direct your attention to the left-hand columns to compare the 20 versus the 21 budget. Miscellaneous fees revenue, again, is revenue associated with master alarm box. We have budgeted an increase in this department of $75,532 over the prior year, representing an increase in the number of boxes that will be registered and billed. If you look to the center box, time being, Mr. Chairman, you'll see that based on this year's budget of $719,000, we're already projecting and seeing virtually an actual number of $772,098, representing a $53,000 increase in the budgeted revenue this year. And I think a question was posed to Ms. Richards from the internal auditor, if I'm not mistaken, so permit me to say that. Why would there be an odd dollar amount when the fee is $500 and that hasn't changed when you do the math multiplied by the number of boxes? And I believe because there are some fees that are not paid timely and the city has the right to collect an interest or late charge. So there are, in the current year, there are those revenues that are associated with collection. And then there's expectation that that will occur in every year. There'll be those who pay late and will pay with a late charge. So that's our projection for the master alarm box. There are some telephone service charges that are affiliated with that. The 20 budget was budgeted at $7,000. The current budget is budgeted at $6,000. I think that's a reflection of what we're seeing. Actually, we're seeing that we're probably collecting closer to $6,000 this year. So we adjusted the budget going forward to be consistent with that. That rounds out the revenue page. This department is expected to collect the revenue that was at least budgeted in the FY20 budget or better. If there are no questions, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to continue with expenditures.
Just a question, Mr. Richard. Mancini just testified that there'd be the reason why there's a odd number, odd value.
Mr. Chair, she stepped out for 1 second. Could you hold your question until she returns?
Sure. Okay. Mr.
Thank
Mancini,
you.
why don't you continue with your on the other side, the expense side.
So with regards to page 38, beginning from the top left-hand box, salaries are budgeted this year at a total of $4,111,148, a decrease of $60,794. Overtime is set at level amount from prior year, $275 as is callback. And rounding out the salary components, differential pay is at $43,680 for budget year 21 versus $46,800 for budget year 20. And longevity has an increase of $13,485 in budget year FY21. If I could direct your attention to the center box to look at those categories of salary expense and where they project to be this year as we close out this year. Looking at that, there's a $4,171,942 is the budget for salaries. It's anticipated that it'll rise to $4,330,000 or an increase of $158,000 over budget. There is some makeup on overtime and callback. We expect to save about $18,000 in callback and overtime. We do believe that the differential pay will be close to budget and longevity will be a slight increase. We believe that in total, salaries, including overtime and callback, will exceed budget by $145,000. And I believe either Ms. Richards or Ms. Bavone could explain some of the reasons there was some delays that precipitated some of the workforce payments and compensation. So if there are no questions for me, Mr. Chairman, I'll continue with the report on page 38. Benefits are showing a decrease of $48,345. Fees not classified has an increase of $11,739. Postage is going down by $500. Dues and subscriptions down by $200. Telephone is going up by $144,000. But if you look directly below under maintenance and service, you'll see a reduction of $539,000. Director Bavone will be able to explain some of the changes that affect that, including some of the mandatory replacement equipment that was necessary to be replaced and has in fact been ordered and delivered and I believe installed, courtesy of the master lease that was approved earlier. That rounds out page 38. Turning to page 39, the last page of the review. Stationery for 21 has been reduced by $2,250, while small tools and shop supplies has remained the same. Radio parts and supplies has an increase of $20,000. There's a small reduction in hardware of $4,500. Basically rounding out those categories. And for the current year, we believe those categories will be at or near budget. And I don't see any major budget overruns in those operational expense categories. That completes the presentation of the narrative and the 3-box report. I and Ms. Bobo and Ms. Richards and Ms. Silveria are available for questions associated with current budget and the projected budget.
Okay. Director Bo, is it? Am I saying it right?
Or Bo.
Sorry. First, before I ask you a question, Councilman Taylor.
Yeah, a couple of questions, Chairman. I know the fire alarm fees are in here. What about, do they still collect for the police alarms? Is that not included in here anymore? Or we don't collect on those?
I will defer to Ms. Richards or Ms. Bobo or Commissioner.
We do collect on the false alarms on the police department side under the police.
So that, because that used to be the same person, used to do police and fire, so it's different. That goes in the police side now?
It's showing on the police side. We have contracted, Cry Wolf provides the service to us for the collection of the false alarms. As you recall, 2, maybe 3 years ago, an ordinance was passed in restructuring and increasing false alarms because of the burden it was providing on our police officers and the number of false alarms they were responding to. So Cry Wolf is our manager of that system, and it appears as a revenue on the police side.
Okay. And then, Chairman, this question I had, but I think you already asked, the non-essential employees, we're going to get a list of those, I guess.
Mr. Means.
Yes, we will.
Well,
Yes, I will refer the request to HR Director, yes.
So I would ask that if at the end of this meeting, the several deliverables, Mr. Mancini, and department heads that are still outstanding, we will need them before I schedule the next finance meeting.
Understood.
So it is on you folks to provide the information so we can continue with this budget, and I'll ask Gina and the clerk tomorrow to give you the outstanding deliverables, and then if we get them, then I'll be happy to reschedule the next finance meeting next week. If we don't, then we'll have to have a further conversation. Okay?
And I got a few more, if you don't mind, Chairman.
No, Councilman Taylor.
The software upgrades, are they different from the $107,000 in the commissioner's budget?
Yeah, my software upgrades are for the recording system. We have a new recording system.
Okay.
So yeah,
Yeah, that's different then, because
yes, sir.
okay. The main and service of 539,000 less. What is that? Why so much of a reduction?
Well, because we have a new recording system, we no longer reduced our Motorola payments substantially because we no longer use Motorola for our recording system. We have a new company, Eventide, that we went out to bid for. So they're providing our recording system. We saved on that. And the other larger expenses was the Zetron alarm system last year that was budgeted for, and we don't have that in the budget this year.
Okay, and the fee's not classified. Why the $11,000 increase?
So the fee's not classified. What was added there is $9,100 for training for fire dispatch personnel for EMD training and TCPR training. Included is the software that will be installed on the 4 dispatchers consoles in fire. And
Okay.
sorry.
So back to the EMD training, because when I worked, obviously, as you know, in communications, we were all EMD trained. The problem that happened was it was only for a 2-year period, or I think a 2 or 3 year period. I don't even remember. And what happened when the training, when it was up, your train, your license was up, or your certification was up, the city at that time didn't pay for the certifications.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that the city is going to pay, because obviously, I don't remember the cost of it for a 3-year. I want to say it was $100 or something, but none of the a few of the dispatchers kept them up. I don't even think the dispatchers and fire are still there, but I just would hope that the city, when we pay for these trainings, I would hope that they continue, because what happens, the city doesn't pay, and then all of a sudden, we had a great training, and then 3 years later, the city doesn't pay for the certification, and then nobody wants to do it on their own.
Right. So this training includes a 2-year certification. And then I believe, I have to look at the numbers, I believe it's $109 to recertify after 2 years.
Okay. And Director, my last question, I brought it up last year and I bring it up all the time. Where is Annie and Allie?
I'm going to defer to the commission.
I still get.
I know.
If I can find retired Deputy McGarry, he owes me a lunch. I don't know where he is, but I got to get down there and get it.
I've been discussing this for quite a few years. We haven't forgotten. I promise you that.
All right.
Let me take that if I could, Councilman. We have plans to upgrade our CAD system with Tyler. That is in the master lease. That's expected to happen in the next 12 months, the upgrade and the execution of that. The state just went to the same CAD system that we use, Tyler Technologies, and they will be transitioning their 911 CAD system to the same company that the city uses. That will take them between 12 and 18 months across the state, E911 to be on that system. Once that happens, we'll be able to get Annie Alley and other data, because we'll be on the same system and we'll be able to receive that data. Why has it taken so long? And why have other municipalities been able to patch Annie Alley in? We did look at that after our conversations a year ago, and probably even longer. Why can't we get that data to our CAD system? And we tried to do that in a patch system way, and we weren't able to, because of the difference in the technology that exists. Westerly Fire patched it. They were one of a handful that was able to do it. Cranston Police also tried to, and had a lot of problems with transferring or getting the transfer of that data to public safety. So the good news is we have a date that we expect to receive that data, and that date is going to be dependent on the full execution of the state's upgraded and transition into their CAD system 12 to 18 months out.
Is that part of, I'm going to roll back, is that part of the 107,000 that you were talking about for the upgrade in your software? Is that included in that, or is that something altogether different?
That's something altogether different.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman.
Treasurer, you're welcome. Treasurer Lombardi.
Mr. Chairman, I've been going back and forth with the personnel director, going back to essential and non-essential. I believe, at least from my information, is that essential and non-essential change hour by hour and day by day. So I don't believe that you're going to get an overall list, or at least I have not been able to get one, in regards to who is essential and who is not. Now, you might say police and fire are essential, but in regards to general employees, I don't believe that there is a clear-cut answer to that question.
Well, Mr. Lombardi, you can put your hand down. I see another thing. I would present the major premise. We just had a couple of departments here prior who literally have half of their department sitting home, not working, but getting paid full benefits. That would seem to be implied that they're not essential, since they've been home, getting paid and not working for the past month and a half.
No, and I agree with you, but.
So I know, so my point is that if the administration is claiming they can't figure that out, well, then all we have to do is count all the people that are sitting home right now, not working and getting paid full time, which seems to be a big number in this city government.
Right, but let me give you an example.
I guess maybe we have to ask the question differently. How many people are sitting home, getting paid and doing nothing? That's all we have to answer. 'Cause that clearly shows that department's running fine with all those people sitting home, getting paid and doing nothing.
Right, but let me give you an example from my office. I have an employee that comes in 2 days out of the week. And during those 2 days, they're essential because they're either giving out checks or mailing checks and going through, or doing tax classifications and different things. The other 3 days, they're at home and they're non-essential. So, because the work that they're doing is done.
I understand.
Mr. Chairman, I might.
Mr. Mancini, then Councilman Taylor. Mr. Mancini?
To the treasurer's comment, and I'm aware of those type of situations. This is my interpretation. I believe by definition, throughout the entire workforce, there has already been some determination of who's essential versus non-essential. Within the degree of non-essential, then I think there's a status known as critical. Critical could be, in Mr. Lombardi's example, that there's a person whose responsibility is to manage, match, and disperse checks and obtain proper signatory sign-off that the checks were either released or mailed. I would call that a critical function, but not essential. And so that's my interpretation and definition. I could be, I may be corrected on that, but I think within the group of employees, there are those distinctions that may be coming forward. But I had already pledged to you this evening from the beginning of this meeting that we will refer the matter back to the HR director. We will make certain that we have that information before the next finance committee meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mancini. Let me refine my request. Oh, because as I've been going through these hearings and we're finding out huge numbers of people sitting home, getting paid full time and not working. I also want to know in total what that is, what are the positions, and in what departments and units.
Mr. Chairman?
Just the beginning of this week, we found 2 departments that half their department is literally, more than half is sitting home, not getting paid, doing nothing. So I'm refining my request that you can utilize the essential, non-essential identifier, but I also want to know that portion, who's sitting home, what position, and not working and getting paid full time. Okay? And now I think we have Mr. Lombardi continuing, then Councilman Taylor, and then we can get to communications, hopefully.
So, Mr. Chairman, I understand CFO Mancini's comments. but I've asked the personnel director 4 times for this information, and he has been unable to provide it. So he provides the payroll, which classifies employees, and he says it changes week by week, hour by hour. So I think Mr. Mancini's answer is, makes more sense, but I have been unable to get that information.
Mr. Lombardi, I get your point, and I just want to say that, Mr. Mancini, my refined request, I think, will help the personnel director, because we all know who is at home, not working, and getting paid full time. So have that director put together that laundry list of units, positions, and people in the amount. Councilman Taylor?
Thank you, Chairman. The reason I asked on the communications, or you originally asked with who's essential and non-essential, I'm looking at the numbers of the control center operator it's funded for 19, should be 24. Crew chief is 7, there's 6 instead of 7. Fire department dispatcher, 5, should be 4. Those are all, my opinion, because I worked there, are essential. A police department dispatcher, 12, and there's only 10. My concern is that I don't want us to end up like we all saw in 9/11. We're now in 9/11. How they were 911, sorry, and they were shorthanded, and the people were working overtime left and right because people either retired, God forbid if people got sick, or ended up with this COVID thing. They're out for 2 weeks. So at some point we have to look at either filling these positions versus the overtime that we're spending. Because I don't know what the overtime we're spending now on the police thing, but it concerns me. I don't want to end up, like I said, and I know everybody saw it, that I feel that these are essential employees, because Providence is the busiest. How I explain it, it's like the air traffic controller. So the people call the fire department or the police department, and the call takers and the dispatchers are the ones to send out the people, the trucks and the proper people. Or if there's a chase, I don't want people to be tired in those positions, because I know, like I said, Providence does over 100,000 runs in the police department, which is the busiest in the state. The fire department's doing over 45,000 runs in the fire department. But when you look at the call of, say, 100,000 runs, they're probably taking 2 to 3 times that many calls. If there's a shooting, they don't get just one call on a shooting. They get several calls on a shooting, or several calls on a fire. So I don't want to end up like the state did by having too little dispatchers, and people retire, and the people are working overtime and working too much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Taylor. Mr. Mancini, also part of that request, also I'd like to know how many temps and seasonal employees are still getting paid and not working in the city budget at this time. Because I believe you also have seasonal and temp employees at home getting paid full payment and not getting paid. I'd like to have that identifier also. Now, the reason for that, of course, Mr. Mancini, is I'm just, seems like every other business, state, city, and town is having financial issues, but the city seems to have the wherewithal to send more than half their workforce home with pay and not get any work product out of them. So it's an interesting thing that's happening here in the city of Providence, and yet we're able to continue to fund that continue to fund that policy. And like I said, once we get the secret recipe from all of you on the executive side, we're then going to give a presentation up to the other cities and towns in the state, and how we were able to continue to fund everything without having any impact from this COVID-19. So during these budget hearings, we look forward to that, understanding that recipe. I want to get to the communications, and as director, I have a question for you, a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
I noticed in your dissertation, you mentioned you rewired the police academy building. What police academy building did you rewire?
I'm sorry, it's the old Academy Avenue building. I didn't need to say Police Academy.
What's the old Academy Avenue building? What's that?
The old Water Supply Board building on Academy Avenue.
The one that's closed up right now?
It's closed up now, but there's police offices in there. There's some offices that are, some police departments.
Is it a police substation? Is that what you're saying?
It's not a police substation. I believe it is, some of the people that were in the police academy are in there. There are some people from the Intelligence Bureau, I believe, and a couple of other departments. I can look up and tell you exactly who's in there.
Commissioner, is it because there's not enough room? Why do we have, does everybody know that the police in that location?
Yeah, we do. We do. We've assigned some administrative staff over there that's doing various functions administratively, with no site for our training academy, and not able to go back to Chad Brown. They needed space, so we put them over there as well. So it was those two and maybe a couple other units that we needed space to place them, and we've been temporarily using Academy Avenue.
Commissioner and Mr. Mancini, can you give an accounting of what's happening in that building and make sure Vice Chair Ryan knows what's happening in that building? Who's in there, what they're using it for, and et cetera? I think that's beneficial for her and award. Madam Director, I have another question for you, Madam Director. You mentioned that you created a new data and telephone service for the City Hall. Is that correct?
Yes.
In other city divisions? Were you able to acquire that newfangled technology called call forwarding?
Yes, sir.
All right, so does that have that capability at this time?
Yes, sir.
And so that means, let's say for the sake of conversation, the City Hall telephone operators, could they actually go to another location and actually receive the phone calls that City Hall gets and answer them and then forward them accordingly?
They would, yes. We could bring them back if the offices are filled. Yes.
But they could do it at another mobile site, is that correct?
I'd have to look at it to how many calls they could, but I think that it is a possibility, yes, sir.
What about the tax assessor and the tax collector's office? Could they also have the people that receive those daily calls actually receive them at a different location and then answer them and forward them accordingly?
Absolutely, sir.
And is that a major undertaking for your division to do?
No, we could actually do it remotely.
Great. So, Mr. Mancini, your department heads, as they all seem to have sent all their workers home to do nothing and get paid full time, maybe you can start, since the mayor's looking to continue to close down the city all the way deep into June, maybe it's in time maybe to now try to get some of those functions back online. It looks like the director, congratulations, Director of Communications, because you seem to be the only one, along with the commissioner, that knows that capability exists throughout city government. So I commend you and the commissioner's department for using it, and commending you for actually having it. Is that something that just happened like recently in the past, like 5 to 6 months, or has that capability been available for the city for longer than that, for many years?
As long as I've been deputy director and director, it's been available.
How long has that been?
About, 6, 7 years.
Okay, thank you. And has anybody approached you from this administration to talk about teleworking in any form or fashion? And besides the commissioners, people who have seen that they've utilized that technology?
We have forwarded a couple of lines, yes. We have gotten calls for that, and we've also assigned cell phones for people to be able to, so we can forward department lines into a city cell phone as well.
Do you have a laundry list of how many people are now, at least for your, who will be receiving a call forwarding and a teleworking system?
I can provide it, yes, and I did send Deputy Commissioner Richards the list of people that we've provided cell phones and tablets and modems for them to be able to deal with.
Do you have the ability to provide the hotspots, the mobile hotspots too?
Yes, we have forwarded a couple of those, yes.
Okay, so can you please give me, forward a laundry list of how many hotspots, tablets, all that stuff, and how many people received it this past? And then are there any requests presently from any other department heads requesting that process? And if so, who?
I'm sorry?
And if so, who?
Licensing and Vitals has, I have it right here. MCCS, DIS, a couple of Parks Department, DPW, Licensing and Vital, Planning and Developing.
And so do you have the ability to also allow them to, on the mobile tablets, as you put it, to actually connect into their own work computer, into the mainframe, and actually do work and email back and?
Yes, I believe City IT does that. So we do it for our department. So when I go home, I can get on my laptop and I'm automatically on my city. So we do have VPN at City IT. And for us, we have our own IT that does it.
Right. So could you also provide that information to internal order? And Mr. Mancini, can you ask the IT department to provide by tomorrow who they have provided that access, email access, et cetera, and who is working from home specifically? And then maybe we can talk about how we will continue to fund this government and see if we can get these folks that have been sitting home doing nothing but getting paid full payment to do nothing. And just remind everybody, Rhode Island has the highest percentage of unemployment in the nation. There are people right now who are sitting there who are worried about that they don't have a job and will not have a job. And yet we're paying people to sit home, full-time payment, and not do anything. I think it's kind of insulting to the taxpayer and actually to the people. Councilman, President Pro Tem Correa?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I may, just to speak on your request on who's working remotely and who's gotten the calls transferred to them. So I don't know if anybody knows, but the city council staff, all our phone lines have been transferred to various staff members on a daily basis, whether they go to Mary Lee Dixon or one of our other staff members in there. So all our phone calls are transferred to our staff members in the council office, as well as just about every one of the city council staff members are all working remotely from home by computer, which has been all set up by the IT department. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Council President Pro Tem. And that just shows the council's ability to make sure that the public is getting the benefit of the people that work for them. So that's a positive thing. Director, I noticed that there were, Councilman Taylor mentioned it, there's 250,000 emergency calls. Is that correct?
Between police and fire, both, yes.
Do you have the breakdown of what kind of calls they are? Meaning like the fire calls, what kind of fire calls, how many rescue calls, et cetera, Do you have that?
Yes, we can provide that.
And what about the police side? Do you have the breakdown of what kind of calls there are, like the domestic, et cetera?
Yes,
and
sir.
do you break it down? Do you break it down by area, ward, to get a sense of where all the the hotspots?
I can't do that breakdown, but I'm not sure if someone at the commissioner's office can. I don't know if Dan can do that.
All right. So could you just provide down the breakdown, what you can, of how those phone calls run?
Yes, sir.
It'd be interesting to find out what the #1 police call is, the #1 fire call is. We realize probably rescue is probably the #1. Is rescue the #1 call? Madam Director?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Right. Thank you. And do you also deal with the calls that go to neighboring cities and towns for rescues that we don't have, the overcapacity? Do you have that?
Our fire dispatch, yeah. Yes,
So can you find out how many calls how many rescue calls we, have to then, what is it, mutual aid, I believe it is, I think that's what it is, right? How many go to other cities and towns?
yes, sir.
Do you have that? Thank you. All right. So I'm looking at your organizational chart, Madam Director, and I just want to make sure. So the way this works is right now, every position right now is filled, is that correct?
I have 2 positions that are not filled. We had a retirement.
Which one of those?
2 control center operator positions need to be filled.
Oh, so you have 20 control center operators and you have 18 right now, is that what you're saying?
No, I'm
You have
sorry.
20, sorry?
Yes, I actually have 17 because of a retirement. I don't think that's, we had a crew chief retire. So I have to promote from within. A dispatcher becomes a crew chief, a control center operator becomes a dispatcher, and then I have to fill that control center operator spot.
Is that the only openings you have at this time?
That is it, sir, yes.
And can you tell me how your department's been running during this process? Because are you all in one building?
Yes, we are, sir.
So how have you been handling the running of this serious operation?
So in my dispatch centers, I moved desks around, phone lines, so they can be separate and maintain a distance. So they're able, all my dispatchers are able to come to work. We did the same thing on the fire side. The telephone, well, we have a crew that reports to Rochambeau Avenue. That's the cable crew. So they report there. There's 6 there. The building is big enough for their offices to be separate. We had to move their offices around. Same thing with the radio crew downstairs. I have 3 radio engineers and they moved their desks around. We decluttered. It was a great time to declutter. So we threw a lot of things that were stored downstairs and we were able to move their desks around as well.
And does everybody have whatever masks and stuff like that, all the appropriate gear?
We have, Commissioner gave us surgical masks, and we have people that have been sewing masks for each other, so everyone has a face covering.
Great, all right. And do you have access to the sanitizers and that stuff?
Yes.
And how are they handling that? Who handles your cleaning? Who's the cleaning crew over there? Is it a private company?
No, we have 1 city employee. We have a laborer.
And is that laborer, does they have the supplies? Are they cleaning, are they doing additional cleaning in the building? Cleaning at least 3 times a day versus once a week or something, whatever it is?
Yes, we do.
Has that happened?
Yes, we do. And public property was coming in and helping us spray down as well.
Okay. And that's on a daily basis?
Yes, sir.
Is it more than once? Is it more than once a day?
Yes, at the change of every shift.
Okay, so will that be how many, in the 24-hour span, how many times?
3 times.
So is that, maybe that's something that you, do you need more of that? Because your type of unit is kind of important. You don't want people
We have,
down.
the commissioner and the lane have been keeping up with us, and so has public property. So
Great. Internal, do you have any questions?
No, I do not.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can hear, yes, I can hear you. All right. And, all right.
Mr. Chair, can you see my hand up?
Oh, I'm sorry, I can, Vice Chair?
You better keep your eye on me, my friend.
I know. Sorry.
Mr. Chair, I actually had a question. I heard the director talk about her effort to make sure that her staff had remote functionality, and I'm happy to hear that. I'm sure that that those costs or those expenses can be recaptured or recovered from COVID federal funding. Is that true, Mr. Mancini? Is that an expense that we can recover?
So, Madam Leader, my understanding of the COVID-19 eligible recovery is that those expenditures that are infrastructure or property in nature, in addition to those that represent personal protection equipment, but those that are infrastructure or building modification. Those expenses can be recovered even if it constitutes a more permanent change, but was meant to be a temporary change to accommodate the work ability of employees and providers up to and through the declaration period. When the declaration period subsides, ends, or expires, I do not believe any new costs are eligible for reimbursement. And then the reimbursement rate, I understand, is no greater than 75%. I think we heard Director DeSerbo last evening give similar testimony, but that's my understanding as the COVID recovery internal task force is assembling all of the expenses associated to date that we have expended and that we will be submitting for reimbursement.
So the directors who acted quickly and made provisions for their workforce to work remotely should be commended for being so aggressive and making that happen, because those funds are precious dollars. And I'm happy to know that the communications director took advantage of that. So thank you, Director, for your leadership on that topic. And then I wanted to ask about cleaning. I know, Mr. Chair, you like to keep us to the topic before us, but I think cleaning is an overarching question for the entire city. I know we don't have a lot of people sitting at their desks, which we're trying to get our arms around the actual number, but what are the provisions that the city has made to make sure that our buildings and our work environments are cleaned on a regular basis? And once again, I commend the director on, I'm happy that your facility and your staff and your employees are able to work in a clean environment. But what are we doing citywide on that topic? Are we relying on internal staff members to perform the cleaning? How often? If it's not internal staff, have we engaged a cleaning firm? What are we doing?
So, Leader Ryan, while my jurisdiction, of course, is finance and fiscal matters, from knowledge that I have obtained in either regular briefings, I understand that public property, first and foremost, has the primary responsibility for nearly all city facilities and city buildings. They are working and have been working from its inception to clean, sanitize, and disinfect all of the city buildings, particularly during the high period when there were literally no city employees inside City Hall or the other main campus of 444 Westminster. Back to the chairman's original question about those people who are sitting at home. And while I like to defend the integrity of all the workers, I believe the mayor's decision, I'm speaking for myself, was meant first and foremost for the public safety and public health of not only the workers, but the public. So, City Hall is an older building. It's a building that has its share of clutter. It has its share of tight working spaces. It also has under consideration, it's a historic property. Even in some of our most challenging times, because of the historic nature of the building, we weren't able to modify the building for things such as HVAC, air conditioning, etc. All of those present challenges. And while I know that this committee is concerned about finance and fiscal, as I am, it was the challenge first and foremost of keeping the workforce safe and the public. So with that, I know public property has played a daily role in sanitizing, disinfecting every aspect of City Hall, 444, and the other buildings under their direction. So I'm not certain as to whether outside companies were brought in or there was a need to. I believe the existing custodial staff has done some of that work. So I don't have the details, but I can refer that to the Chief of Operations, Sabrina Solaris.
So I would like to know if we've entered any contracts for cleaning and the cost of that. And the reason I ask, because I believe the additional cost of cleaning, and if we did have to engage a service to clean any of our buildings, would also be a COVID-19 related expense that we could recover. I'm just becoming very concerned that we may be losing track. And have you collected, of the departments that have come before us already, have you collected the COVID-19 expenses, qualified expenses to date?
Absolutely. Daily. They are being compiled daily.
Thank you, Mr. Mancini. could you provide that to our internal auditor on a regular?
Sure,
basis?
I would refer that to Ms. Solaris Hahn. It's under her direction, so I would have her staff provide that, yes.
That's fine. I do think that that's something that is very important to us, and we need to keep track of it on a regular basis. Thank you. Thank you.
I can assure you that it's being done.
Thank you. Communication.
Ms. Richards, Ms. Richards, aren't you part of the COVID-19 collating all the expenses?
I am, sir. I'll have a report to you probably by tomorrow.
Right. Aren't you, you're the one doing it for the whole city, right? Or just for, aren't you doing it for the whole city? Or just for
No,
which
I am
part?
not, sir, just for public safety.
Okay, great. So we'll get the public safety tomorrow. Who's the individual for the rest of the city, Mr. Mancini?
That would be Chief of Operations Sabrina Solaris Hahn. She is coordinating with her staff and I believe an outside consultant who is assisting the city with its COVID-19 recovery application.
Ms. Richards, thank you for your promptness for tomorrow, sent to internal order. Mr. Mancini, could you also ask that individual to follow through and be as prompt as Ms. Richards? They must have a running list right then. They just can press a button and send it to the internal order. Ms. Richards, as the costs continue post tomorrow, please continue to forward that information to the internal order.
I will, sir.
Thank you. All right, shall we go on to the fire department? All right, Mr. Mancini, why don't we go to, looks like B6, it looks like you have an amendment to B6, is that right?
That's correct. Ms. Silveria submitted today to Clerk Selleck a substitution of the fire narrative and 3-box report.
Okay, so then, went into a motion to substitute item B6 for item for exhibit B6.
Second.
Second by Councilman Taylor. Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Mancini, talk about the fire department. Please, sir.
Yeah.
I think these are yours, right?
They are.
So you want to keep these back, right? Is this one yours too?
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is Department 101-303, and the fire department itself has a revenue-producing aspect to it. The revenue for FY21 will increase by $150,000, bringing the total to $1,348,000. The revenues in this department are generated from fire plan reviews, fire inspections, and rescue run revenue that's not recorded in the non-departmental budget. Much of the rescue run revenue is recorded. You'll see that in at a different session. We discuss tax revenue and non-departmental. We are anticipating an increase in plan review fees in accordance with the projected revenue increases that we see also in inspection and standards. And while they're not identical, there is a corollary relationship between what work is done at Department of Inspection and Standards and the fire plan reviewers who do their share of that work. So we'll see that as well. With regards to expenditures, salaries for FY21, $38,986,715, an increase of $1.1 million over the prior year. This department, the department salary expense includes the 2.75% increase to the sworn officers' salaries as contractually agreed to. Benefits for the FY21 year will be a $38,503,403, an increase of $2,761,000 over the FY20 budget of $35,742,282. Services, total budget services for FY21 are $418,000, a decrease of $76,405 over the prior year budget. Reductions in this department were made in the areas of external training and tuition. And finally, supplies for the FY21 are budgeted at $1,687,564, an increase of $129,021 from the FY20 budget. And this increase is primarily due to increases in miscellaneous materials and supplies for safety and internal training purposes. There are no capital expenditure items in this category. Committee is satisfied with my narrative. I will go to the 3-box reports, starting on page 33. Your columns to the left compare the FY20 budget to the FY21. With respect to plan review fees, this year's budget is expected to expected and projected to receive 189,000 in additional revenue in that category, for a total of 1,239,000. Rescue billings this year is expected to be 50,000, or a decrease of 10,000 over the prior year. And fire department inspections is expected to be 50,000, also a decrease of 30,000 over the prior year. Overall, we're projecting that there'll be about a $150,000 increase in billings in revenue for the FY20 year versus FY21 versus FY20. If I could direct your attention to the center box columns to discuss this year's projections versus this year's budget. We are expecting that we will be at projected revenue for all of the categories that make up fire plan review, rescue billing, and fire department, a total of $1,090,000 versus the budget of $1,190,000, about a $99,000 or $100,000 reduction in revenue. And I think the biggest categories in that area is, in fact, the plan review fees. We're seeing about a $54,000 budget shortfall, all things considered, including the conditions that are prevailing under COVID-19. The Department of Inspection and Standards, while their work continues, so does the work of the fire plan reviews. We spoke with Chief Dolan recently, and while that's under his direction, under the direction of Commissioner Parry and Acting Fire Chief Parry, that those items continue to show activity, and we hope and we trust that that trend will continue through the rest of this year, and we'll see how it turns out as we move into FY21. But as it stands today, we think that we'll see maybe a less than $100,000 reduction in that budgeted revenue in the FY20. That completes the information on page 33 regarding revenue. If I could, with your permission, turn to page 34 to discuss expenditures. Starting again in the left box.
Yep. Go ahead, Mr. McKinney. Sorry. To expenditures.
Starting in the left-hand column box, reviewing salaries for the year, 21 versus 20, we anticipate an increase in the salary main lines of $404,000. We can discuss that in greater detail once I complete the three-box report. Overtime is expected to be level, while overtime training has expected to have an increase of $118,594, and callback is expected to have a budgeted increase of $540,000. Total increase in that category of callback and overtime, $658,000. The other categories of payroll and personnel are service out of rank, an increase of $111,095. Holiday pay, fire, an increase of $18,586. Total category of increase in these two categories, $129,681. Longevity, expecting a decrease of $12,202. The total budget for salaries, all in, regular salaries and callback overtime, we expect to see an increase of $1,180,178 for the budget year FY21 versus FY20. If I could direct your attention to the center box, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, to review the current budget FY20 and where we project that budget will complete itself. For the total salary lines, we expect that there will be a reduction in salaries and savings of $504,000. The budget for this year was $31,095,535. We expect it to arrive at $30,591,237, a savings of $504,000. We expect that there will be a callback in overtime, mostly callback excess of budget, $1,081,000. That category will have a $1,157,000 overage over budget. In the other areas of service out of rank, holiday pay for fire and differential, we think that that category will have a $233,000 overage, and we'll see some savings of $78,000 in the longevity category. All in, we expect that the salary line of all salary lines, including regular salaries, callback overtime, will have a budgeted excess of $808,152 in the current budget as a budget excess. For benefits, if I can direct your attention back to the left side, for benefits for the 21 budget versus 20, we expect to see a $2.7 million change in the budget. And Mr. Chairman, I will point out to you that the two largest components of pension contribution in the city budget is police and fire. And as we were going to press and we were relying on the allocations, I think I may have shared this with a treasurer and general auditor, and we will, in fact, as I have said in earlier testimony this week and last week, while the budget was submitted at expectation of 100% of pension contribution on the next level of amortization for FY21, some of the allocations need to be adjusted across the strata of all departments. I believe fire may be one of those that need to be tweaked a bit, but in total, the budget in total for pension allocation has been funded at 100%. So if you will permit myself and the finance department to provide that schedule of allocation that to the degree of its accuracy. The total is accurate. The charges by department have somehow shifted from department to department, and we'll have that allocation, and we'll get that to the internal auditor, and that could be a schedule that can be furnished as a committee for further review. So with that said, we're seeing some changes in the pension increase. Yes.
Talking about pension.
Yes.
Can you also make sure you get the internal auditor, the laborers, as I mentioned the other day, the laborers contribution,
yes.
The payment chart that we have to pay that they originally gave us. Okay?
Yes.
I'm sorry, continue, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, and then in addition to the change in pension, the largest next change in that category, Mr. Chairman, is a change in medical benefits assigned to the work group. The total of that category is an increase of $2.7 million. As I continued through that area, and if I could just draw your attention to the center box again, comparing those categories of fringe benefits, it appears that we will be at or better than budget for this year. So we projected quite well, both on the pension side and medical side. We hope to see a savings of about $47,000 in the year FY20 budget. Moving back to the left side of the column as we close out page 34, promotional exams, there'll be a $5,000 increase based on activity within that, within the promotional exam routine. Fees not classified, we'll see a slight increase there of $1,294 with a reduction of postage of $1,600. That category basically nets out level. And then finishing up on that side of the categories, you'll see that training and tuition will be a reduction of approximately $80,760 in tuition reduction. And I'm told by Ms. Richardson, Commissioner Parry, that we're seeing that as there are less candidates who are seeking tuition or tuition reimbursement, and that's showing up. That is showing up in that schedule for FY21. As I turn to page 35, once again turning to the left of the page, the categories that appear on that chart: maintenance and service. We see an increase of $13,761 for maintenance and service. There is a increase in repairs to autos and trucks of $25,000. That category in total has an increase of $38,761. We see a reduction in transportation of persons and training. This is basically a training expense that's going down by $40,000. Also in that category is legal expenses. That's by contract at $120,000. Miscellaneous professional services at $5,000 has stayed level, and this miscellaneous expenses in total has increased by $900, and that rounds out the services category comparing FY20 to FY21. As I direct your attention to the center of the page, comparing FY20 budgeted to the projection for the year, it appears that we will see savings throughout those categories, including at the transportation of persons and training, basically a $50,000 savings. That entire category should generate a savings to the budget of $58,195. Moving to the lower part of the page 35 and back to the left column of the three boxes, the categories of stationery. Stationery will see a reduction in FY21 of $1,200. Small tools and shop supplies will have an increase of $11,430. Medical chem and lab supplies will have an increase of $33,000 in 21 over 20. And then construction and maintenance materials will see a slight increase of $2,000. Educational materials will increase by $29,617. Moving downward, auto parts will see a decrease of $50,000. Housekeeping supplies up $900. Lumber and hardware up $10,000. tires up 10,000, uniform and apparel down 17,000, and the miscellaneous materials and supplies has an increase of $100,614. That entire category has a net shift in expense upward of $54,174 in the 21 budget versus the 20 budget. If you move to the center box, sir, and members of the committee, you'll see the various comparisons of what was budgeted for FY20 and where we believe we'll be at year end. And as we go through that, it basically appears that we'll end at budget or near budget in all of those categories for FY20. So ending at approximately $1,560,000 against the budget of $1,558,000. We can round up the expenses. The chairman on page 36, I believe those categories are categories that are non-functioning. They really carry no expense. That would presentate an explanation of budget and categories. I'm open to questions or questions that the commissioner or deputy commissioner Richards can answer.
Before we do that, Commissioner, in the police department, how many police officers are on, is it IOD, injured on duty?
I'll have to get you the exact number. My somewhat educated guess, probably around 10.
And can we have an age report on that? How long they've been out? And
Sure.
also for the fire, how many on the fire side?
Yeah, there's less.
All right.
Yeah, I'll get both of those, but fire is probably half of that.
That's fine. And also an age report on that. I'd like to know what's the outstanding on that, okay? Internal auditor, did you have an outstanding question on the previous, did I get to you?
No, it was just a comment.
Okay. You all set? All right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Vice Chair Ryan?
Thank you.
Vice Chair Ryan and then Councilman Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On plan review, the budget for 20 was about $1 million, and the proposed budget for 21, 1.2.
Correct.
It's a $180,000 difference, 18%. How are you calculating that? Are you forecasting it based on, well, why don't we start with, in your introductory remarks, you spoke about the plan review component. Could you just review it one more time? What is that comprised of?
So while I don't have consummate knowledge of the details of that employment, I do know that it is the work that's associated with building permits and permit review as it pertains to fire sprinklers, and those critical apparatus that's necessary for sign-off in building construction and structures and zoning.
So are you
begins the process.
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you
Go
off.
ahead. No, go ahead.
It's tough on Zoom. It's easier when you're in the room. You can see
Yep.
each other easier. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Not at all.
So
If you
your
have a
projections,
question, go right ahead.
your projections for plan review, are you familiar with the projections and the forecasting, or is the Public Safety Commissioner better able to answer my question?
To be the Public Safety Commissioner and the team at Fire, but I did have the opportunity both in the construction of the budget as well as the review in preparation of this evening's testimony, actually for last evening. And I asked on direct question, was that number predicated on knowledge that they have associated with projects that are in queue, projects that are continuing, and the regular receipt of work that happens throughout. They are working regularly. There is no delay in their work, as is DIS. And while they're complementary and sometimes parallel, they're not identical, but definitely one feeds the other. I am confident that what I've seen from the DIS side, and we're going to see that, I'm sure, upcoming in the Finance Committee sessions, we're going to see complementary, but I would defer to Commissioner Parry and Deputy Commissioner Richards to support what I've testified already to.
Yeah, thank you. So we make our projections based on either plans that are in queue or plans that we collectively as a city know that are coming. So we work hand in hand with DIS. And we're projecting an increase in the value of either construction or new construction that we see coming in through both DIS and the plans that we're reviewing. Make those
An
projections.
increase in value, it would be an increase in the number of units you're reviewing, right?
Yes, so we,
value-based
right.
calculation.
We collect the percentage of the overall value, correct?
Okay, I'm sorry, okay. So it's based, your forecast is based on the units or the number of buildings that are online, that are coming online, the anticipated value. Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're
Yeah.
testifying to? And
Yes,
that's how you came up with the increased amount of $189,000.
that's correct.
Okay, what percentage is on business or in process in your forecast?
What percentage?
Yeah, is it 100% of that calculation is what is in process now, or is it 50%?
I don't understand your question. So we make our projections based on both the history that what we've seen, because it's seasonal, and based on what is in queue. So if we know that there are plans coming, because there's been communication either with the city or with our fire prevention team, we know with pretty much great certainty that those projects will be coming in and at an approximate cost of that project in which we base our fees. I hope
You're
that
saying 100% of your forecast is based on projects that are online right now, and you have that value established for.
No, that's not accurate, because there are some projects, that could be 6 months out, 8 months out, that they haven't applied for any permitting, but that team knows that whatever contractor or whatever business owner is going to be developing projects. So based on knowledge that's not in queue, and also what is in queue, as we make our best projection. I hope that clarifies my misunderstanding.
I thank you for your answer. My concern is that your forecast revenue may be overstated should COVID-19 challenge new construction, slow down new construction. So it might be a little bit overstated. That's my point.
I understand. Thank you.
Do you have clarification?
I'm sorry, Council Vice Chair.
Did you want to? I saw your hand go up.
So, Madam Leader, while I'm aware of your concern, it's the same concern that we in finance would share with you in the committee. And because of that, we're seeing a contra-indicative trend that's been shared by DIS. And I asked that question also of Chief Dolan, and we are seeing that trend. And here's one of the reasons why. The building trades and construction industry has not been asked to work in a fashion that would be shelter in place. They believe by the nature of their work that they could work in isolated capacity and not limit their work. And so construction in many instances throughout the state, but here in the city, does continue. We're seeing that by observation. So while I would still be mindful of some slowdown, I don't dispute that, but to date, you can see that we're projecting through the end of the year. That's with recent fourth quarter revenue recorded, that we will be merely slightly off from what we had budgeted last year, and that's a good sign. And so I take great comfort in the fact that we could be pretty close to where we think we'll be for the 21 budget.
I appreciate your confidence. I just wanted to make sure that you had calculated the slowdown, clear anticipated slowdown in your forecast. Thank you.
We did, and may I say, unlike things that are more obvious, and I use that word for the reason, because by observation, all of us have the ability to determine like things such as meals tax, hotel tax, speed zone revenue, a red light revenue. We can see that by direct observation that we don't really need a chart from an outside agency that can predict revenue. We know that we won't see that. We won't see. We heard in briefing the parking administrator, now the director of Public Works, you would have heard testimony tonight that parking is nearly at nil. We've already projected that in our operating report and our cash flow. We've already seen that observation, but this is a category I have confidence that will come in fairly solid.
Speaking of cash flow, may I continue, Mr. Chairman? Have you given, I know that we have an outstanding request that, our finance team has an outstanding request for cash flow projections. That request has been out for some, many weeks. How are we doing on that? Did you do the cash flow projections?
Yep, so as I gave testimony to you on Monday, and I believe last week, while that request was provided to us 3 weeks ago, the vast majority of that is predicated off the budget that was submitted by the mayor last Monday. We expect that within the next day or so, we'll have at least that portion, the 12 months for the FY21, constructed off the model that we use annually. It's always built at the beginning of the year, along with what we have already completed for the last 3 months of the fiscal 20. And then we're working on the projection for FY22. We expect to have it by Friday at the latest. And if we have it, once we can vet it, I'm happy to share that internally with council advisors to get their input on that. But that would be the instrument that would be used. I would expect that we would come forward and ask the council to give us that consideration, that with that refinement, that we will put that on a request for some bond borrowing facility, just to have that facility ready in place if and when we need it.
Forecasting is also important because it gives us perspective as we evaluate your budget, your budget. It's a critical,
no doubt,
which is why we asked for it. And yep. I do believe I saw that original ask 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, I agree. And Madam Leader, if I could just say for the record, because I know that you all appreciate the work that we all do collaboratively, certainly the council team and the administration team. It's not a delay as much as it was that the information was not assembled and available and ready for us to do that work. That much of that work came from the new budget. New budget cash flow has to follow that budget to the best of our ability. We are working daily diligent, along with prepping for these sessions, along with all of the other attendant duties. And I know that everyone in government is working just as diligent, but to at least explain where we are definitely working to get it completed this week.
I appreciate the explanation, and I hear you. Everybody's working in overdrive. I just want to explain for my other colleagues on this committee and other council colleagues that the reason that we're asking for it is important to us to understand the revenue streams that are contemplated in this proposed budget that is before us.
No doubt.
It's an important component. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Taylor.
Okay, I have a few things, if you don't mind, Chairman. In regards to the fire chief salary, like last year, I would recommend taking this salary and position out and leaving it unfunded. Last year, as you may remember, I recommended to the Finance Committee the same, but put it back last minute as the administration told us that they were going to hire a fire chief. We are going on 5 years now that the Providence Fire Department has been without a fire chief. And this year, on Wednesday, February 19th, 2020, all over the news and paper, Mayor Laws has said he does not see a need for a fire chief in the capital city. As everyone knows, I've been very vocal that I think the Providence Fire Department does need a fire chief, but as clearly stated that the mayor does not see a need for a fire chief and has no intentions on hiring one, then we shouldn't be funding this position. Over 5 years without a fire chief, we have budgeted roughly $860,000. And I asked, where has that money gone? I know it wasn't for a fire chief. So I would recommend taking out the fire chief position and the pay, because the mayor clearly stated that he does not want to, the capital city does not need a fire chief. Okay. Some other issues, questions I have, the COVID-19. Yep, go ahead, sorry.
Internal order? Internal order, are you on the line?
I am.
Please note that for the record and for the upcoming budget changes and amendments, please.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Taylor?
Thank you, Chairman. The COVID-19 rescues runs, have we been billing for the use of the masks and the face masks, gowns, everything that we've been doing?
Ms. Richards and Mr. Commissioner?
I'll defer to Ms. Richards.
Yeah, billing, we're not billing other than our regular billing. The increased PPE that we have acquired and continue to acquire, we expect reimbursement from FEMA.
But I guess my question is, like, when we do a rescue, when a person calls for a rescue and they transport it to the hospital, we charge for oxygen, we charge for any medication that's given, charging for actually the ride. You know, it's all built down to different things. Why would we keep a record of masks that we previously had or whatever? I mean, I don't understand why we're not charging for the COVID-19 stuff to keep obviously a track of it, but also to make sure that we're getting reimbursed instead of just one lump sum of being reimbursed.
So it's those runs that we deem COVID-19 are not necessarily COVID-19 positive patient runs. So if they call with any symptoms that are similar, we use the precaution and send that rescue or that second rescue to those runs. Sometimes we never know if that patient is a positive COVID-19 patient in transport, thereby whatever PPE that we use and continue to use, it's hard to determine and tie that to COVID-19 directly. We thought it'd be best that we buy that PPE as quickly as we can and seek reimbursement through FEMA as a result of this virus and the precautions that we're taking, not only in rescue, but in the companies.
Do we have a list? Do we know since March or say January? Well, let's say March. Say March to now, how many COVID-19 runs that the fire department's been to?
Yes, we've been tracking those.
Do we have a number of that by chance?
I don't have it.
What's that, Councilman? The Director of Communications said she was going to provide a breakdown. So, Commissioner, she's going to say, could you just make a note for her to provide and also identify the COVID-19 runs, please?
Sure. I can tell you it's going in an average of 15 to 20 a day for the past 6 weeks.
It was also in the narrative I provided yesterday.
Okay, thank you. Rescue billing revenue. I was a little confused on that. It says it went down $10,000. Can you explain that, Larry? I think I missed it, or it was, you said it was somewhere else, and I didn't get that.
Yes. So, Councilman, the vast majority of rescue run billing, some $5 million, is contained in the non-departmental section of the budget where we keep taxes and other. This particular section forever has been there, and according to what I know, it's rescue run billing that's basically done as out of legal settlements with lawyers on cases associated with that. But Ms. Richards might be able to give me a little more detail on that.
Yes, that is not technically rescue billing revenue. It's actually copies of reports that the attorneys asked for.
Got it. Okay. Got it. Yep, that explains it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Richards.
The fire department inspections. It says there's a reduction of $30,000, which I'm a little confused because you're saying in one thing that the increase in plan review fees will go up. So that means there's more building. But as the building is going on, we send out the inspections, that's getting reduced. Can you explain that?
Defer to the commissioner if he can answer that.
I'll have to get that specific answer because I don't know. My only knowledge of that is obviously our inspections for smoke and smoke detector inspections for real estate transactions have been impacted in this period of time, but let me get a better answer for you because I don't know unless Deputy.
Which I agree. I can see how the COVID would impact that, but to go out and say that the plan review fees will increase, that means there's more building. And once that building, they have to get a CO before people can move in, whether it's a house or business or master box checked or whatever. So that's the fire inspectors go out and do that. So I don't see how in one breath we can say that the plan review fees are going to increase by whatever that figure was, increase by 150,000. And then, but the inspections are going to decrease by 30,000. I don't get that.
So, Councilman, I'll be sure to have the commissioner and I follow up with Chief Dolan and others. But I think because on the plan review, they tend to span larger projects, single application that span a longer period, where the inspections could be multiple inspections that normally occur at the residential level. And I think with the COVID-19 anticipated delay, there might be some pent up desires to sell properties in the next fiscal year or not. But I think that's the relationship as to why we have confidence in fire plan review, including commercial projects more than anything versus what might be inspected. But I will see to it that I'll get the answer for you.
Okay, and sticking with that plan review, I see that there's allocated 6, but we only have funded 5. If that's such a revenue go-getter, I guess if you want to call it, why don't we have 6 of them funded?
Because at the present time, we're processing and able to keep up. If we put on another one, it doesn't necessarily mean more plan reviews.
But we're anticipating an increase in plan reviews of 150,000. So is the 5 people going to be able to keep up with that?
Yeah, yes, they will.
Okay. Next question, the increase of overtime and callback by 650,000. What is that all about? Is that because we don't have enough firefighters, or what is that?
Well, there's no plans or requests to run a fire academy. And so we know as we go into the next fiscal year, we will lose through attrition the number that was given, and then people will elect to retire because they're eligible. So as we decrease the number of firefighters that retire through regular means and other means, then we know there's a direct correlation in filling each of the groups at 88, thereby an increase in fallback.
How many firefighters are currently? Is it 247?
All in? No.
How many are we short in the fire department?
I don't understand your question.
Okay, so if we're supposed to have a total of 519, do we have a total of 436? What is that total that we're supposed to have? Like in the police, we said that there was 30 or 40 people short, and you're doing another academy. How many firefighters are we short?
Elaine, do you have that number in front of you? She's muted, so.
The reason I'm asking is because I'm gonna put the chairman in accolades, because last time we had the budget and the chairman specifically said that we should always continue to have a academy going, because as we hire 50 people, we know that 10 of them are going to turn 60 and they're going to retire. Plus you get another 10 might retire. So you hire 50, but then you've lost 20. So we're always down. So I think it would be cheaper in the long run just to keep to run these academies, because we know it takes 6 months before from start to finish. Sometimes even probably longer than that. That's just the academy. That doesn't talk about the advertising and everything else. So I don't know why we don't continue both on the police and fire side to, because now we're talking about police is going to be down 11 people, plus whatever. Fire is going to be down. The police academy is not going to start until February of next year, and then move forward. So why don't we every year? I mean, we don't have to do a 50 school. We do a 20 school or something just to keep it going. So we always have those people.
I don't know if I'm muted. I'm not. So, right. So that's the math that we always do. How many do you staff on each of the groups? And right now we're staffed between 95 and 99 on each of the 4 groups. We have to have 88. And so there are days that we're overstaffed and there are days we have callback. And as that number shrinks, we're going to have more callback. So if you were theoretically to put 20 new firefighters there, we'll be overstaffing the groups from time to time, leveling overtime, but it costs us more money for salaries and benefits when we overstaff. As everyone knows, you can't go with 88, even though our minimum manning or minimal personnel requires 88, because when they're out, that costs us money, and that's when everyone comes in all the time, all year, and that doesn't happen. We need between 10 to 12 to 15 over the 88 staffing on average across the year to keep the overtime down. As that number decreases, the overtime will go up. So the cost of hiring versus overtime.
Okay. And I think also we should look into, like the chairman brought up before, on this conversation, look into police and fire, the lateral transfers. I think that's an advantage to us because our people never left, to be honest with you. They stayed, they retired. You never heard of someone doing 20 years and going to another department. That changed probably in the last 8 or 9 years. But I think we should look into trying to get, because everybody wants to be a Providence police officer or a Providence firefighter. There would be savings to that because they would already be EMT or EMTC trained. There wouldn't be, I'm talking about the fire, obviously. I believe there'd be a savings. Plus, I think it would be quicker on getting these positions filled than going through a 6 months training academy. And, and they start the same. They start as a firefighter 3 and they go to 1, you know what I mean? But I think it would be a lot quicker if we did both on the police and the fire, the lateral transfers. I think we should look into that.
Understood.
Next question. Travel and entertainment was reduced by 40,000, and I know Larry mentioned it, but I think I missed it. Was that because of the training?
Well, first of all, Councilman, it's not known as travel entertainment. It is.
I'm sorry. It's transportation of personal
transportation and travel.
Okay.
I will defer to Ms. Richards. She can assist with that answer.
So that was reduced because in educational materials, we're moving towards a train the trainer. And so we're purchasing some equipment so that we can train our own in-house. And in the long run, it will be cheaper than having to pay outside entities to train our staff. So we're purchasing equipment to train our employees to recertify them every year. As you know, we have to recertify in the EMT certifications every year.
Mm-hmm. Is that essential to do that?
Yes.
And if that, okay, so we train the trainer. So Elaine Richards is the trainer, and she trains myself and the council, 2 or 3 people on the council. Now Elaine Richards retires. Now we have to go do that all again?
No, we do not. We're training a group of members on the onset in different academies so that it will be continuous and that everyone, as they retire, that it is continuous.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next question. The med chemical let me see what that was. It was an increase of $33,000.
That is
Medical
correct.
chem and lab supplies.
Mm-hmm. And,
Why the increase on that? And
that
what is that?
That is increased to respond to medical supplies, EMS supplies. That is an increase in there for gloves, medical supplies for EMS. And that is anticipated that the COVID-19 will go all the way through next year, and that EMS runs will require more supplies.
And we should get all that 33,000 back then.
We're hoping, yes.
Okay. The small tools and shop supplies, sorry, increased by $11,000. What is that?
That is for hydraulic batteries for the Hearst tools, for special hazards and ladders.
Because they're running out, the date's running out.
Yes, they're at the end of life. That's for
Yeah.
18 of them at $635 each.
Okay. The educational materials increased by 29,000. Is that because we're doing the trainer or?
Yes, that is part of, we'll be into, the EMS training equipment is 14,700. And then we are also, it's an increase to, the resource library. So part of this is, we're establishing a resource library for the promotional training.
Okay. And then I've noticed under this new supplement that I got today that under fire rescue technician, it's allowed for 30 and funded for 33. Why the 3 more? But the rescue lieutenant, okay, so let me back up. So the rescue lieutenant stays the same. There's 21. And as we know, it's a rescue lieutenant and a technician, they're together. But on the technician, we have 30 of them, and there's 30 of them allowed, but 33 funded.
Yes. So, Commissioner, do you want to answer that about the change in the scheduling of the rescue techs and why?
So we have 5 long-term IOD scheduled for, we're in litigation with a few of them, but we're still carrying them. And so the out of rank situation continues with the rescue techs. And so there's a need to fill them, and we continue to pay that out of rank. The mobile health unit that we began 6 months, almost going on 10 months ago, where 2 rescue personnel, it's a pilot program, and we try to get to those calls before they make those calls into a proactive visit to people that need to rescue and identify they need medical services. That program's been successful, and that is a continuation of that program, thereby the increase in need of those technicians.
Now the mobile command, or whatever you call it, you just said that's a rescue lieutenant and a rescue technician?
Mobile health?
Mobile health, yes, I'm sorry.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, and now, though, is that funded by a grant? In other words, what I'm trying to get at is if we have a rescue lieutenant and a rescue technician, they work days, correct? In this mobile health?
They were working 4 10-hour shifts, and they've been shifted around, not necessarily days. The demand for their service has been shifted, so it's not 8 to 5. It's been shifted around. So I think they were shifted to 1 to 9, but now they've been assigned the COVID rescue backup, if you will, behind Rescue 5.
Right, but rolling before the COVID, so we have a rescue lieutenant and a rescue technician. So are those positions, when they're working their 10-hour shift in the mobile health, their regular positions are being filled by callback, correct?
Yes, they're being, well, not necessarily. We assign firefighters from the company to backfill. So when we're overstaffed, it doesn't cost us any money. Or
Well,
back,
you can do that for a rescue technician, but not a rescue lieutenant.
correct.
So if Rescue Lieutenant X is on the mobile health and then that person is supposed to be on a group, we're paying a rescue lieutenant
Correct.
for overtime.
Correct.
Do you have that? Can you get that figure on how much that was
Sure.
for the 6 months? I'd
Sure.
like to see what that was. And also the fire lieutenant, it looks like we're down 10 or it's allocated for 70, but we only have 60. Are we down that because of not a promotional thing, or is that just we had 60?
I can answer that.
All
So
right,
that-
please.
Yeah, so when the new contract back in 17 took effect, it kind of established what the new positions were, the limits within each of the categories were, the position categories were. So that's kind of where it fell for the 60 fire lieutenants.
Okay, because of the closing of companies or whatever?
That's correct, sir.
Okay.
Mhm.
And the fire safety officer, I thought that was a battalion chief, or that's just included now in the battalion chiefs, not a separate.
That's included in the battalion chiefs.
Okay. And the director of training, I thought we had a director over there, a captain of director training, no? Or he's just a captain now?
That
Just a captain.
That's the captain. Actually, it's under director of training and professional development, the salary.
Got it. I see it. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. I think that's all the questions I have, Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
He fell asleep. Sorry.
Internal order?
Yes, thank you. I would just like clarification.
Chair, 1 second. Internal order, then Vice Chair Ryan. Internal order?
I would like clarification. Larry, you said that the tuition in this department is because they are not going to school. Elaine, Commissioner, could you please clarify that is not for reimbursement of classes, or is it?
I'll take that one. Yeah, I will clarify that. Yes, that was incorrect. That is for the EMT cardiac training internal auditor. That is funded for 30 EMT in accordance with the CBA.
Okay, just wanted to clarify for the record. Also, why is the out of rank going up so high? All of your top positions seem to be all staff. Why would it go up so much?
So that I can answer that too. That is also tied to the service out of rank for the it's also tied to the EMS division and the rescue people. There are people working to fill these positions on a day-to-day basis. And also we still have a DAC that's working out of rank. This will all change come probably February of 2021. The problem we have right now is the members of the 51st Academy are not eligible to take the rescue lieutenant's exam until November of 2020 because they don't have 5 years on the job.
Okay, but you do rank for rank. So if a rescue lieutenant is out, then another rescue lieutenant takes over. Is that not accurate?
Yes, so they're working. I wish Captain Chief Kenyon was on the phone to better explain it. Let me see if I can get a paragraph together for you tomorrow and send it over. It's very complicated, this explanation as to why there is this out of rank. And
Yeah, that's extremely high. Also, if you increase your fire rescue tax and you're paying them that much from a firefighter, then they should not be getting out of rank.
no, they're not.
I just think that's extremely high.
So we've moved, like I said, we moved 3 people into a rescue tech position, but they're also paying people on a day-to-day basis out of rank pay, backfilling for the rescue techs.
Okay. One other thing, I don't know what the ordinance says, but you can't fund more than you allow. So that 30 needs to be changed to 33 under the text.
Right.
And I do want to say one thing to the committee. I know the fire department historically has been bashed for such high overtime. Their second pay period in April, it was $15,000.
I can tell you that just about every firefighter has voluntarily given up their vacations to come to work every day during this crisis.
And one last question. You have a DAC working out of rank, you said?
Currently, right now, yes. What we have done is we had a vacancy there due to a retirement, and we have been putting them on a trial for a 90-day period as on an out of rank period, and to give them a temporary period to see how they do. And I believe the commissioner can answer you as when he would be ready to appoint.
Well, what position is the DAC doing?
They're in charge of the group. So we have 4 groups and the DAC, we have 4 DACs. They are the chief overseeing the group and is the chief for that group. So they're responsible operationally in the fire company.
Why is a non-union member receiving out of rank?
No, maybe I answered that incorrectly. He probably isn't. I'll check. I don't believe he is then. I will check and get back to you on that.
Okay. Thank you. That's all for me. Thank you very much.
Vice Chair Ryan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The auditor asked the very questions that I was focusing in on. The service out of rank number at 60% increase is extremely high. That to me points to a management inefficiency. I don't know why it's that high. It shouldn't be that high. I think it speaks to the fact that we have a staffing issue. That would be my immediate response. So thank you, auditor, for zoning in on that, and we'll wait to get further clarification. But it points to a problem. A 60% increase is very concerning. I have a question relative to does the fire department clean up accident scenes? Commissioner, could you explain if they go out to an accident and there's, pieces of automobile strewed over the street, if there's hazardous materials involved? I know they stay and they clean up. I'm sure that there's certain equipment and gear that they need to have, which is a cost to the city. How does that work? Who does clean up after an accident?
So, I mean, they don't clean up hazardous material if we have a crash and a hazardous material leak. They'll manage it and contain it, and they're professional hazardous material companies that will come and mitigate and take care of any hazardous material spill. As far as regular crashes, the fire department does not and is not responsible. It's the tow vendor that we call that takes the vehicle from the scene, they're responsible for the cleanup of those crashes.
So you're saying, you're testifying that the fire department doesn't do any cleanup when there's accidents on our streets?
I'm testifying that they're not responsible. Now, they may take a hose and clean the debris out of the roadway, but the responsibility for crashes or glass and metal and anything else is not the responsibility of the Providence Fire Department or Police Department.
What about in a house fire? If, materials from the house fall into the street, onto the property, on the sidewalks, who cleans that up?
If it goes on to the public roadways, we'll have Public Works come and clean that up, but ultimately the landowner is responsible for a cleanup of a fire.
So the fire department doesn't stay and tidy up the place, or at least take the hazards of glass fallen away, or clean up in any way?
Are you talking a fire or a crash, or it doesn't matter?
At this point, it doesn't matter. A crash, an accident, anytime the fire responds to an incident, I know that they stay and they clean up. And I'm just wondering how we're getting reimbursed for that.
So if that's what they're doing for the sake of public safety, they're cleaning up as much as they can so somebody doesn't get hurt.
Sure, imagine that they would do that.
Right. And so are they technically responsible? No, if we have a collapse of a building onto public space and it creates a public hazard and safety, we call folks from the city to clean that up. So like boarding up a home and making sure that nobody gets hurt as a result of the fire. So I'm sure both the police and fire from time to time do that for the sake of public safety. But the
Have you ever pursued insurance, homeowners insurance, the automobile insurance provider for recovery of any of those fees for cleanup?
Not to my knowledge.
Right, it is a public safety issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, we haven't, that I know of, cost that out and seek reimbursement from the homeowner or the insurance carrier. We try to clean up so it's safe as we leave whatever scene that we're responsible for, so somebody doesn't innocently get injured.
Other municipalities recover some of those costs. Have we ever looked into it? Have you asked the legal department for any advice or consulted with them?
Not on this issue, I have not.
I'm just thinking that there's a possibility. I know that there's a lot of work that go. How many accident runs do you do on an annual basis?
You're going to test my memory.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Because I asked for that a couple months ago. I want to say we're between 9,000 and 10,000 crashes that we investigate a year.
I'm going to ask that you consult with a solicitor and look into the possibility of trying to recover some of the expenses associated with that.
Will do.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm good. Thank you, Auditor, for zoning in on that huge service out of rank increase.
Oh, you're welcome.
Ms. Richards, you intimated that something about that the firefighters are using their vacation time. What do you mean by that?
They gave up their vacation time during this COVID response
What
voluntarily.
What do you mean by that?
To come to work. That's why callback is down.
Let me see if I can clarify.
Because you give up vacation, callback will be down?
Yeah, so they forewent taking their vacation. They didn't give it up. So they have whatever, 15 days a year, and it's scheduled a year in advance. And they have the option to change their vacation as long as it doesn't go over the cap. And so the department in the past 6 months, 6 weeks through the COVID, most of them have not discharged vacation time and is coming to work.
So Commissioner, so they chose not to take vacation and come into work, but they're eventually gonna take their vacation and get paid.
Correct.
Okay, so that will cause another issue. Mr. Mancini, in light of that the mayor's looking to continue to close down city government for another month, and also looks like the city enterprises, have you now begun new calculations to amend this proposed budget, or are we still gonna go with these proposed revenue figures that you guys were basing this budget on, from a couple of months ago? When are you folks gonna come in with the new amended revenue process? The mayor's proposing another, lockdown for solitary confinement, further for another month, means there's gonna be businesses, meal, et cetera, when all that's gonna be shut down. As you mentioned, you're also gonna shut down automobile traffic. You mentioned the fact that there's not gonna be any parking, not gonna be any events, not gonna be any summer events at the convention center, the civic center, et cetera. So my question is, are you guys beginning the process now? I presume the mayor consulted with you folks, because you guys in that inner circle team, that you knew this was happening. So my question to you is, what is your plans now to address that the mayor is looking to continue for the continuing shutdown of the city government for another month? So have you got new updated revenue and expense numbers? And if not, when will you have them so we can amend this budget accordingly? That's to you, Mr. Mancini.
So, Mr. Chairman, with due respect, the budget before you has already reflected those changes that we believe would be affected.
No, Mr. Mancini, I recognize that, but this budget was submitted, you mentioned you worked on it a few weeks ago, and then it was finally given to the council a week ago. The mayor, did you guys already know the mayor? So are you telling me this budget reflected that you knew the mayor was gonna continue to keep government, city closed for another month? You knew that already? He's gonna keep it closed to the end of June? I presume the answer is no, right? Okay, so my question to you is, will you need to amend this budget accordingly based on the fact that the city will continue to be in a lockdown, situation under the mayor's yoke?
Would you permit me to answer that in my own words?
I'll let you answer that one, as long as you can address the
I'm trying to get the answer out. I'm trying to get the answer out, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
And I'm being very respectful and very deferential to the question.
Okay, I appreciate that.
No, I did not know that any specific order to reopen or continue the closure by any date when the budget was submitted. And nor did the mayor, I'm sure. The budget's been developed over 2 months. The observations that are reflected in our monthly cash flows, our most recent operation report, is to continue through this year. This budget is to commence July. Those observations have been reflected. We believe that there'll be a slowdown in revenue still, no matter what date the mayor, the governor decide on that we can get to stage 1, stage 2. We had already presumed that there would be a slowdown in the first quarter of July 21 budget, that there would be restaurants would still be slow to getting back to full operation. And that may happen for many months. I don't have that ability to predict that. But have we been reflective of that already? Yes, we have. I don't think the mayor's announcement today will change that significantly. It may tweak it somewhat. And yes, the finance team is continuing to look and measuring and monitoring operations, revenues, and expenditures throughout the period, right through the end of this fiscal year, and as best as we can the new year. I don't believe it'll change any of the budget positions that we presented to you thus far. Those that will change are known activity. Yes, we will amend. That's what this process is designed to do. We will amend in committee. But to my knowledge, I have nothing today that will change the budget that was submitted before you.
Mr. Mancini, as always, you gave an excellent and eloquent response. And I mean that sincerely, that was good.
Thank you.
So now, with that said, for the present budget, right?
Yes.
The mayor continuing to end of June, pretty much is, another month. Will this have an impact on the present budget and its revenue and finances? Since the mayor's continuing his thing.
So Mayor, Chairman, the mayor's
That's
decision.
okay. I appreciate that.
I'm trying to get my words out, sir. The mayor's decision, I'm certain, is continued based on public health and public safety. The projections that the finance team has submitted and filed with both the council and in the cases of state quarterly reports has already taken the great observation that restaurants are already going to be severely hampered through the end of June, regardless of which stage is engaged. We've already reflected that. We've already reflected the reduction in hotels. We reflected in speed zone. There's no school cameras up and running through the end of this fiscal year because there's no school cameras up through the end of the school year, and then some. We've already reflected the loss of revenue that could happen of traffic citations at municipal court. We have already looked at the reflection of no parking in the city. We have already projected that loss of revenue, and we continue to refine that. Even today, in discussions with the Director of Public Works on parking administration, we continue to support our decision to show virtually no revenue for the next 3 months in parking. And guess what? It's probably pretty close to what we expected to be. So while I'm not pleased with that, I am pleased with the reporting and the projections that we're using. So no, the mayor's decision, I believe, is continuing because of precautions associated with return to work for city workers and how we will work, how the city as a whole will respond to public safety, public health. But it has not changed our decisions as yet on the upcoming budget for FY21.
So, knowing now that the mayor continued to keep City Hall and Center closed for another month, are we now going to start looking into finally trying to get our workforce at least teleworking in a mobile fashion? Or are we going to continue to pay them for another month now, sitting home, getting paid, and doing nothing? So
the city
has that discussion begun? And if so, we've asked this weeks ago, and if it has, or is it going to be alternative, just going to continue the same old status quo?
Yes. The chief operating officer, the director of human resources are working daily on protocol associated with return to safe employment as to the city facilities. Each department director and manager, I'm certain, is preparing plans on how their department could function when City Hall, when 444, when public safety, when any of the buildings that have seen reduced or nearly complete closure, when they will get back to opening. What might that look like? Plans are being developed by department directors.
No,
They're being asked to do so.
You're using the event that those buildings have to be open. Right now, those folks could be working right now, even with these buildings closed. See, I think it's a false premise that's being presented by the administration. The bottom line is you have right now people that could work from home, even if this building, the doors are actually physically locked. So it's a false premise to say because the doors are locked here, well, they can't work, but we're still going to pay them to sit home and do nothing. That to me is a false premise, as well as what I'm going to say again. It's an insult to the people of Providence, and to the folks, by the way, that right now have lost their job. Okay? So what I'm asking once again is, and I'm going to continue to ask this question as I've asked for the past month of this administration, and it's claimed that it's so, as they've always constantly stated, that they're so technologically savvy and IT hip, they seem to be stuck in the Stone Age at this time when everybody else has applied modern technology to put their workforce to work while they're home and getting some production out of them in order to justify the full pay that they are receiving. That is the point. Councilman Espinola.
Thank you, Mr.
Councilman
Chair. Thank you. That was about a half hour ago, so I don't want to sound off topic, but I feel that it's critical.
You're more than welcome, sir.
During Councilman Taylor questioning, I felt that there was important information that was brought up. And that was in regards to the number of runs that are being conducted that are COVID related, which is, according to the commissioner, is anywhere from 15 to 20. Now, if we look at the last numbers pertaining to the Latino community, Providence, as we know, is a majority city, and the majority of those being Latinos. And we have an average of 45% of the tests being done coming back to the Latino community. So with that information in mind, my question was, perhaps to the Director of Communication or to the Commissioner, have we made any adjustment in predominantly Latino community, especially Ward 8, 9, 10, and 11, which is the heart of South Providence, where we have about 45% coming back positive, according to the information that we have today. Have we made any adjustment with the rescue and the first responders so that when they do make a phone call and they're sick and they cannot breathe, that they are understood? Do we have any bilingual respondents, especially when they make the runs to their homes? It's extremely hard, as you can understand, to be out of breath, to not be able to breathe, to be sick, and not be able to explain yourself because there was a language barrier. So, Commissioner, have we taken any measures or any steps to put in place? Perhaps, I don't know if you already have, or if you're considering it, or if we have the manpower to perhaps increase the number of bilingual first responders in the predominantly Latino sectors of our community.
So that let me answer it this way. That's why it's important that when we hire a diverse workforce. We've improved in doing that. So we have call takers that are bilingual and can communicate. If not, we have a service. If there's a language in which we can't communicate, there's a service that it's 24/7 that we can call a service line for that communication, because you're right, it's critical and we need to understand what the nature of their 911 call is. When we staff rescue, it's open for the department to seek that position. And the more we diversify and have bilingual firefighters that turn into EMS folks, the better we are to serve. I think we as a department have come a long way in that diversification, and particularly English speaking. We have not seen any increase in our inability to communicate on these runs. I can't say we have a Spanish speaking person, because there's only 2 members on each rescue, on every rescue. But if not, we're able to communicate by our communication system to somebody that can communicate to that person that doesn't understand English. So I know it was sort of a long, answer. Yeah, we are concerned, but it hasn't had an adverse impact for our runs in our service to our community, despite the number of people that have been affected by COVID-19.
So you're still able to manage with what you have. So do you know off the top of your head how many Spanish rescue workers do you have right now?
I don't know off the top of my head. I can get you the number both on the police and fire side. I can almost guarantee that we have people for duty 24/7 that are bilingual, particularly with English and Spanish, on the police and the fire, and probably on both with multiple officers and firefighters that are bilingual.
All right, just understand that it is critical, it is extremely important, and if there is any adjustments that will need to be made, it'll be now. And I mean, if we need to bring anybody else on board in order to meet the needs of this community. Thank you so much.
Just so you know, and I take no credit, but as we hire both police and fire, we make a determination and seek whether or not they're bilingual. And when it's near the final selection of our recruitment and hiring process, we value those candidates that want to be police or firefighters. We value that skill set of being bilingual. And we have hired at that stage of the hiring process, every candidate that is bilingual, regardless of what the second language is.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity. Looks like Mr. Chairman may have fallen asleep.
No, never. Mr.
Oh,
Chairman.
sorry. 1 second, sorry. I didn't realize it was off. Commissioner, I have a couple of questions. Thank you, Councilman Espinal. Out of all your departments, we went to the Commissioner of Public Safety Department and we went to the Communication Department. In police and fire, are there any individuals who are at home getting paid full money but not working? I presume more on the civilian side than the police and actually the actual first responders. Is anybody in that category?
Not on the sworn side on both departments, and the civilian side, there's very little civilians on the fire side. And
Are there any at all at this time?
I'm trying to think if there's any that are home and doing nothing. I venture to say.
Are they? I know, like, for example, I'm sure you've got some of these other departments, and there's most of the departments in the city, except in yours, are majority of the workers are sitting home, getting paid and not working. Do you have that? Any people identified in these units and these departments in that same scenario?
And certainly not the majority, but there are some that are at home and able to work from home. Yes.
Okay. We need to have that number, what that is. We need it for tomorrow morning. Okay. And the position identified. Okay.
Sure.
Thank you. Elaine, Ms. Richards, will you get that taken care of, please? Get it to internal order.
Yes.
Thank you. And Commissioner, I also want to ask something else. I've heard numerous conversations by the executive branch dealing with the COVID-19 issues and their different executive orders. Has the Providence Police Department done any type of enforcement actions against the citizenry in any form or fashion based on the mayor's wishes of his executive order?
The only action we've taken was when some nightclubs and some bars, and I don't think there's any restaurants, but we've taken or we have filed violations that will be heard in the future, but we have not issued any arrests or civil violations or summons against anyone in the city as a result of the governor's executive order and or the mayor's executive order.
Do you have you been ordered, or do you plan on doing anything like that in the next month or so, since the mayor has continuing with this process?
We're going to continue with what we began 6 weeks ago when executive orders are executed. We, as a department and coordinating with other police departments in the state. We encourage and we try to educate those people that may be violating, and we've been successful thus far. And we hope to continue with that same vein in the next weeks that these executive orders and this crisis is upon us.
The reason why I ask you, I guess the mayor was quoted recently saying that he actually, I think, supports other citizens to actually, maybe it's lack of a better term, harass other citizens if they don't wear their masks. Has that order also been given to the Providence Police Department to also do the same to the citizens of Providence?
No, he never ordered, us to communicate any harassment at all. He, along with other leaders, or Badger, like we see in this state as leaders, political leaders or appointed leaders, need to educate our community why it's important they do these things, because it is frustrating. So he has not ordered.
Excellent. Well, I'm just going by what I guess the mayor just recently stated, that he was asking citizens to do that to other citizens. So I was wondering if he also took the next step of asking the Providence Police Department to do the same. Now, with that said, my next question to you is, have you been given any type of informational pamphlet that you give to your police officers that when they have, they see an issue that they can actually pass out and explain or educate the health issues? Is the Providence Police doing that kind of process? And if so, when, where, and how? Because I haven't seen it.
No, we're not passing out any informational. This thing changes real quickly and frequently. So we continue to push out our message internally to both the police and fire. As as you've seen and others seen, as this thing began hitting and did hit, we're changing as we see the data and the experts making recommendations to keep our community safe. So if it would change within a day, if not within hours, if we pushed out information by paper to our community. We're trying to use every other means.
The reason why I ask these questions, Commissioner, because it's imperative during these types of crises that government in general is also in check. When we have a paramilitary operation and then we have unilateral decision made by one branch of government, which can impact all the citizenry, always creates a danger to the citizens' rights and due process rights and right of American citizen. As you know, during this process, numerous constitutional rights have been suspended, from freedom of assembly, et cetera, and et cetera. And we understand the rationale for it, but we also have to be very vigilant as gatekeepers, not for our democracy to be demoralized or further diminished based on a particular branch of government's wishes. And that's why it's important, as you as the commissioner, who in theory, by the way, is a creature of both branches of government, as I mentioned the other night, in which you have an obligation in order to be actually the civilian review of check and balances of our paramilitary operations, as well as the check and balance of the executive branch or the legislative branch, if they so choose to step or get over their skis. So that's why I'm asking that, and I want to make sure that there is a judicious and a tempered approach from how the police are going to interact with the citizenry in the city. And I want to make sure that that is continuing with that, continuing with that type of utmost professionalism and protection of both the citizen and, of course, in lieu of this crisis.
I understand,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman, and I am very sensitive to that, and we're doing our best to balance that to get everyone through this crisis. So I hear you, and I completely agree. And we'll continue with that mindset as we try to get through this crisis without doing damage or continuing the spread of this fatal virus.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that time. Any other questions or comments at this time? All right, so first I'd like to thank everybody for participating and taking your time out on this budget stuff. Commissioner and team, we may have to bring you back maybe in the future if we have to, if we're looking to any additional questions. I asked Mr. Mancini and also department head directors to provide the information to the internal auditor. My suggestion, deliverables by the end of the week, it's important that information is delivered to her so we can get it in a timely fashion, so we can review it and then act upon it accordingly. Any other questions? If there's none, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
Second.
By Vice Chair, Councilman Taylor. Thank you all this evening. Be safe and be well. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Gina, can you stay on the line for a moment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the
Okay.
council. Have a good evening.
Thank you all. Actually, Gina, call me on my.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.